This guy was totally stunned when he woke up in an incredibly strange place. Minato had absolutely no idea what was going on, only to see a stranger's face with hair black as night reflected in the mirror. He wondered where his signature silver hair had gone. Before Minato could even process his confusion, a doctor and nurse barged into the room. After a quick checkup, the doctor was shocked to find that the injuries from his previous car accident had fully recovered, as if they had been healed by holy magic. Yes, literally, healed by holy magic. But wait, a car accident? What the hell? Minato blankly turned to the doctor, asking if his magic had run out. But the guy clearly had no clue what his patient was talking about. What are you talking about? You said you were fighting monsters during that natural disaster. That only made the doctor and nurse even more bewildered. Was this kid in the hospital so long he lost his marbles? Can you tell me your name and what year it is? Ichikami Minato. And I'm pretty sure it's around 1970, right? The doctor felt his head spinning. This kid is suffering from some serious trauma. Your name is Kusanagi Minato, and it's the year 2022. This time it was Minato's turn to panic. I'm Kusanagi Minato. It's 2022. These two didn't look like they were lying. That TV over there was paper thin and crystal clear, and the calendar on the desk also said 2022. And that little device the nurse was swiping on, he'd never seen anything like it. This really was the future. Well, this is a fine mess. An old soul in a new era. I have no clue what's going on. So how am I supposed to act? The doctor mentioned that the natural disaster he kept talking about was ancient history 50 years in the past. It's gone now. Monsters still exist, but they're rare. The world has returned to its peaceful state. If that's true, even if it's hard to accept, he should at least thank the heavens. Now he had to face the reality that Ichikami Minato from 1970 had sacrificed himself to save the world, and then reincarnated into the body of Kusanagi Minato, though nobody knew how such a difficult feat was pulled off. A few weeks later, Minato was discharged. Following the original owner's memories, he returned to his room. Kusanagi Minato's parents passed away when he was young, and ever since then, he'd been living off the money they left behind. Minato lay on the bed, deep in thought. He didn't believe in reincarnation, but his spectacular return must have been the work of the gods. Minato read through Kusanagi's documents and learned he was attending the Kamui Magic Academy. Back in Minato's day, there was no such thing. Pretty interesting, actually. Suddenly, his bag made a noise. He picked up the phone and it showed Tadano calling. Minato had no idea what to do with the thing, so he just tossed it aside, not giving a damn. The phone was blowing up with spam messages from Tadano. Heard you got out of the hospital, get to school. I'm out of cash. The next morning, Minato somehow made it to school. He was an adult now, the same age as these kids, yet here he was still a student. It made him a bit nervous. It sounded cool, but Minato immediately had to judge the school. A guy yelled and flicked a pathetic weak fireball at a wooden dummy in front of Minato. Minato used his keen eyes to look around. Everyone only had a tiny, weak amount of magic. He held his head in disappointment. He couldn't believe his descendants of magic were this incompetent. Compared to when Minato was just starting out, these kids weren't even a tenth as strong. Minato walked in with a sulky face, not noticing all the eyes watching him. Once he got to class, Minato regained his composure and sat at his desk, feeling like he'd traveled back in time. It was exciting. Minato wondered if the original owner had any friends. Then the gang arrived. A heavy thud of footsteps and a loud voice boomed from behind him. You dog ignoring my messages. You're just a low-life Kusanagi and you dare to do that. Minato replied with extreme calm. Who are you? The red-haired guy glared, lunged forward and kicked Minato, yelling as he did. You motherfucker, you dare not remember Tadano. The legendary Junyu trash you good for nothing. Minato remembered the name Tadano on his phone. Oh, he remembered now. Are you a friend of mine? Jun smirked and reached out. Finally remembered, you idiot. Do you even know what a friend means? Minato immediately grabbed Jun's hand tightly. Friends should of course help each other out. Jun shuddered and threw Minato's hand off. He grabbed Minato by the collar as if he wanted to eat him alive. Money. Where's your money? Spit it out. The fortune your old folks left you is still there, right? Minato sighed. That was when he realized Kusanagi Minato didn't have friends. He was being bullied. Jun was like a pufferfish, and every word Minato said made him angrier and desperate to punch him. Just then, the classroom door opened and a clear, sweet voice rang out. "Good morning." A girl with blue hair appeared radiating charm, with a bright, glowing face and a graceful figure. Those gorgeous legs. Just that was enough to make Jun stare in a dazed drool, almost dripping onto Minato's face. In front of his goddess, he didn't dare do anything, so he just threatened Minato a few times before storming off. Today's lesson happened to be history. The professor was talking about the moment the supreme mage Ichikami Minato sacrificed himself to end the horrific catastrophe. Everyone in class nodded along as they studied history, combined with the professor's lullaby-like voice about how monsters flooded the world, pushing humanity to the brink of extinction. But the leader of the magical world at that time, the supreme mage Ichikami Minato, didn't think so, along with a series of other events that everyone already knew. The professor asked the class if anyone knew who Ichikami Minato exactly was. The blue-haired girl Mizuha jumped up and answered, "He was the only survivor after the first natural disaster and the first mage. Also, he was the reason for the founding of the Kamui Magic Academy, sir." "The Kamui Magic Academy again, huh?" As she spoke, Mizuha's eyes sparkled with admiration for her idol Minato, and the professor confirmed that Mizuha's answer was absolutely correct. He was the very first human to ever wield magic, and this magic academy was founded with the goal of training many mages just like Ichikami Minato. Back then, Minato was without a doubt the greatest mage in human history, and the professor even emphasized that this topic would be on the exam. Meanwhile, Minato hung his head low over his desk, silently wishing for the professor to stop as every single nerve in his body that felt embarrassment had been triggered. Minato's unusual trembling left his classmates confused while he himself was regretting ever coming here, just to spend the whole class listening to people praise him. However, since the world had found peace, it seemed the newer generation of mages had grown weak. Minato stared out the window blankly, watching the clear, blue sky, wondering how long it had been since he felt this kind of tranquility. Who knows how much time had passed? The professor ended the class and reminded them that there would be a general magic assessment tomorrow. Jun took the chance to rush over to Minato and sneered, "Did you hear that? A general magic assessment? It's going to be hilarious watching you make a fool of yourself tomorrow." Minato put on a bored face. Does this maniac have grass growing out of his mouth or something? Why is he talking so much? He didn't want to be here anymore. Seeing Minato stand up and walk away, Jun went back to mocking his parents. "Your old folks didn't have any power either, right? Oh, so you're just a pathetic orphan, huh? I almost forgot, ha ha ha." The whole group burst into laughter, making it so that Minato couldn't let it slide anymore. Even though those parents belonged to Kusanagi Minato and not him, it touched upon his pride as a man. "Do your parents know you're this uneducated?" Minato replied calmly, but that alone was enough to make that blowfish Jun puff up his cheeks and grit his teeth. "What did you say? You piece of trash, don't you dare compare me to you." Jun immediately summoned a magic circle, its power turning the whole room a fiery red. The classmates looked at each other worried. Is he really going to use magic in the classroom? Jun fired a fireball directly at Minato, intending to kill him. Minato stood there calmly, even though the other students had panicked and fled in danger. Mizuha anxiously ran toward Minato. A massive explosion, accompanied by scorching heat, instantly engulfed the entire room. Mizuha couldn't reach him in time and could only blame Jun for showing off his measly magic without a care for whether the other students might get hurt. Jun was scolded by the girl and got annoyed. "It was that guy who started it. It's not my fault." A few seconds later, the fire died down. There was only gray smoke left and nothing could be seen. As the smoke cleared, a figure was still standing there, Minato one hand in his pocket, the other holding his bag completely unscathed, looking at them nonchalantly. He scratched his head. "I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or an insult, Jun. Not bad." Jun was terrified, as if he'd seen a ghost. How did he not even have a scratch after taking my attack head on? To Minato, if it was just basic magic, his magic barrier was more than enough to block it. He didn't need to use any other spells. Minato had been patient because he thought Jun was just an immature brat. But it seemed he wouldn't learn his lesson until he saw the grave. Seeing the look on Minato's face, now the three punks instinctively huddled together in fear. A powerful blue flame erupted from Minato's body. The light quickly engulfed the entire room. Everyone present was paralyzed and unable to move. They didn't know what kind of entity they were facing. Minato slowly walked toward Jun, who was trembling like he was standing in the middle of a northern winter. He reached his arm out toward him. There wasn't a single glimmer of light in his eyes. Jun's face contorted, his mouth hanging open, unable to scream. What was that sound just now? Did one of you kids just use magic? A professor suddenly burst through the door after hearing the explosion Jun had caused. Minato pulled his arm back. The professor asked him what was going on. Minato let out a sigh. Then, with a saintly expression, he replied, "Nothing happened in here, sir. Perhaps someone outside accidentally misfired a spell, but the professor said that there were no magic clubs operating on the school grounds right now." Minato immediately deflected, saying it seemed someone wanted to test their magic, because mages love to show off their spells that much. Then where did this smoke come from? The professor smelled the burning scent in the room. Minato immediately claimed it must have drifted in from outside. Surprisingly, the professor believed Minato, because he knew the boy wouldn't lie. But before leaving, the professor still warned his students, "I will find the culprit, I promise. Everyone go back to your seats." Minato cheerfully said goodbye to the professor, telling himself he'd better create a fake scene to cover this up. Let's get this over with. After the professor left, the room fell into a suffocating silence. Jun turned and ran away, gritting his teeth and cursing Minato in his head, while Minato was also full of concerns. Even though they were just students, how could they stand a chance against monsters? Even though natural disasters were gone, monsters were still lurking around, and so Minato decided to go scout the area. That night at the old ruins of Sibia, which hadn't been restored yet, Minato used a magic circle to fly through the air, stopping on a building to observe. Afterward, he picked up speed but couldn't sense any monsters nearby. Everything, even though it looked devastated and ruined, seemed to have already been cleared out by the police. Suddenly, Minato sensed a monster's aura nearby, and even signs of a human presence. He immediately dashed toward where the signal was coming from. Just then, a girl was lying on the ground, trembling before a terrifying two-headed beast. Its mouth was drooling, having been starved for years. At that life-or-death moment, Minato arrived just in time. The monster, already closing in, suddenly roared in pain. Minato had conjured countless sharp spikes from the ground, shredding its body. Just like that, he had wiped out a beast several times his size. Minato turned to look at the girl on the ground. The badge on her uniform marked her as a magic police officer. Minato didn't want to get involved. He only told her to be more careful next time. Before she could even thank him, Minato had already flown away, as if he had never been there. The police officer, after regaining her composure, wondered who Minato was. He looked like an archmage, yet she noticed he hadn't used any incantations at all. Meanwhile, Minato glided through the sky as if skating on water. Covering his face was a smart move, as he was just a soul possessing Kusanagi Minato, and he couldn't afford to stand out too much. But today, Minato was disappointed once again. A magic police officer almost got killed by some trash monster like that. The standards of the police force had fallen off a cliff. Minato could conclude that humanity today couldn't even take down a petty monster. It wasn't just the students and police. It seemed like mages in this era were much weaker than before, but Minato wasn't too sad. On the contrary, he felt glad that his power was still useful. He would use his magic to clear out the monsters in the vicinity. He couldn't let them harm the innocent people here. The next day, as scheduled, the students underwent their magic power assessment. In front of them sat a bulky, massive machine that could measure both the quantity and the attribute of one's magic power. These were the two most important metrics for anyone aspiring to become a professional mage in the future. Minato was stunned. Why had magic regressed so much? Students might be one thing, but even the teachers couldn't sense a student's magic power. That was beyond words. Sensing magic is the very foundation of mastering it. Don't they know that? Mizuhara suddenly approached Minato. "Do you have a moment?" Their conversation caused the whole class to whisper and gossip. Mizuha said this was their first real conversation. She reintroduced herself as the second daughter of the magic nobility Mizuha Zuika. Minato felt a headache coming on for the umpteenth time. What the hell is magic nobility? Zuika was shocked that Minato didn't know the Mizuha family was one of the 4 great clans leading the mages. Minato didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Back in the day, none of this existed. He hadn't even heard of the Mizuha name. Furthermore, Zuika's magic power wasn't even that high for a family famous in the magic world. The amount was honestly pretty lackluster. Meanwhile, Zuika still didn't understand why Minato was acting this way. She had initiated the conversation, and he didn't even seem grateful. Jun, on the other hand, was gnashing his teeth, jealous that Zuika had approached Minato first. Minato scratched his head and decided to play along. So what does a member of such a prestigious family want from me? Zuika really wanted to punch Minato in the face, but as a noble she had to maintain her elegance. This attitude made Minato lose all patience. Zuika had sought him out, because yesterday Minato remained unharmed after taking Jun's attack head-on. There had to be a reason. Just as Zuika opened her mouth to speak, the professor announced it was time for the test. Minato was happy to have an excuse to get away from this drama queen. Zuika was frustrated but not angry because, after all, the test would reveal Minato's true strength. Next up was Jun. He didn't have a shred of confidence and looked extremely anxious. He unleashed a surge of magic power that made the machine glow brightly. The number on the screen quickly stopped at 1,000. Jun screamed like a chimpanzee. "I'm so awesome, even stronger than before." Minato stood by, thinking, if 1,000 is the standard, then nothing has changed in 50 years. Next was Zuika, looking just as confident as Jun. As soon as she touched the machine, the number jumped to 2,000. Water attribute. The professor's jaw dropped, praising them both. "Your magic power is truly at the top of this year's class. You two will definitely become exceptional mages." The whole class erupted in cheers for these 2 rising stars. Only Minato couldn't bring himself to smile. Zuika is at the top with only 2,000. Compared to these amateurs, it's not much better. Zuika glanced at Minato, wondering if he felt ashamed looking at her results. Minato tried to ignore her challenging gaze. This girl is truly annoying. Next was Minato's turn. The class knew him as the academic genius, but when it came to magic, he was always at the bottom. Jun still thought Minato had no talent. Even though yesterday he had been so scared of him, he almost wet his pants. Zuika watched Minato's every step, certain he couldn't compare to her. Minato didn't know what to do. In his past life, he had been too prominent, so he had felt quite lonely. Perhaps this time he should hold back a little. But then, thinking of that arrogant guy, Tamar, and the girl looking down on him, Minato decided he didn't want to be modest. He placed his hand on the device and unleashed a massive wave of magic. He decided to go all out as long as this thing could handle his full power. Minato's magic even surged out of the classroom, waking up students in other buildings. Zuika opened her eyes wide, unsure of what was happening. The number on the screen kept climbing relentlessly. The stone couldn't take the pressure and released the energy into the air. A blinding light flashed and a massive explosion echoed far away. Sharp stone fragments exploded outward, fast enough to kill someone. Minato used magic to block them, ensuring no one was hurt. He had only been serious for a few seconds, and this machine couldn't even take it. Furthermore, here, no one could even sense his magic. Could these brats really become mages? The professor frantically scanned the area to make sure no one was hurt. He even thought Minato was lucky to be standing right at the center of the explosion without a scratch. "This is the first time I've ever seen a measuring device explode," he muttered. Could it have been faulty from the start? But now we have no way of knowing Kusanagi's magic power or his elemental affinity. Minato wondered why that mattered. It turned out the academy was dividing the class into groups for field practice, and now they didn't know which group to put him in. So the professor decided to put Minato in Jun's group, and Jun shot a look at his 2 lackeys. With a sly, crooked grin, Jun said, "Of course, leave it to us, Professor." The professor conversely felt completely at ease, handing Minato over to Jun. As Jun walked past Minato, he tried to put on a menacing, villainous face to scare him. "I'm really looking forward to this, Professor," Minato said. The practice site was the old Sibia, a place where monsters still lingered in the ruins, which is why the current Sibia was abandoned. Mages and police regularly patrolled the area to keep monsters from wandering too far, which is why academy students were required to participate. More than half the monsters here had already been cleared out by the mages so they could rest easy. Minato hadn't expected a field practice, but he went along with it. Even the students could take down a few, and they were even working in teams. Minato had already been there last night, but something felt off. Minato was certain he had wiped out all the monsters here, yet he could still sense a few nearby, and there were no traces of a disaster. How are they still showing up? His classmates were even betting on who could take down the most today. Minato felt worried for these carefree girls. The professor announced that the practice had begun, and Jun immediately shoved Minato against a wall, his face full of arrogant superiority. "Hey, stay right there and don't get in our way, got it? I'm being nice, so don't you dare beg for mercy later, you hear me?" Minato brushed the dust off his sleeve. "If you don't like me, you could just ignore me, you know." Seeing Minato talk back, Jun bristled, as if a switch had been flipped. "Don't talk to me like you're my equal, you bottom feeder." "So what if you're trash? Why would Mizuha be interested in you?" Minato tilted his head. Was this lunatic picking a fight with him just because of some girl? Suddenly Minato had a realization and asked, "Oh, don't tell me. You're in love with Mizuha." Jun's eyes blazed with rage, but Minato didn't care. He had sensed something approaching. Jun began to chant a spell. His two lackeys in the back helped out too. Minato told him not to do that, but Jun thought he was begging. Minato just gestured lightly. "Look behind you," Jun screamed. "You think I'd fall for your stupid tricks, you—" A shadow suddenly loomed over them, making Jun instinctively turn around. A massive two-horned monster had appeared out of nowhere. The three tough guys shrank back, trembling and stuttering. What? Why is it here? What? There's a demon soldier here." Faced with a real monster, those three were nothing but small fry. The two lackeys begged Jun to do something. Though scared, he was still confident in himself. "Take this, you bastard!" Jun launched a fireball to incinerate the demon soldier. Seeing it didn't move, he thought he'd succeeded. It was as easy as pie. But no, through the smoke. The demon soldier's body didn't even have a scratch. Minato wasn't surprised. How could a demon soldier be taken down by a first-tier spell? Minato stood back to watch the show. The demon soldier stepped toward them. Jun was so terrified he sat right down on the ground, tears welling up his teeth, chattering uncontrollably. His pants were soaked because he'd forgotten to wear a diaper today. The demon soldier lunged toward Jun, but halfway there it stopped upon seeing Minato. A flood of bloody memories of its comrades flashed through its mind. The demon soldier immediately backed away. Minato walked forward casually. Clearly, even a demon soldier knew who was stronger between them. That's right, it could sense the immense magic power radiating from Minato. The demon soldier's arm trembled as it roared, summoning several magic circles. Minato held out his hand and summoned a magic circle without even chanting. "How are you gonna beat it with a first-tier spell?" "We're gonna die!" The lackeys behind them wailed in fear. Just then, the demon soldier used a second-tier spell, Stone Wall, launching massive chunks of rock at them. Jun closed his eyes, too scared to look. Minato smirked and used a first-tier spell, Fire Arrow. A torrent of flame erupted from his hand. Even just looking at it, you knew it would swallow the demon soldier's tiny rocks whole. And it did. The rocks were incinerated, and then the demon soldier. A massive explosion unleashed a powerful gust of wind, causing Minato's coat to flutter. The guys finally opened their eyes, wondering, what the hell just happened? Had Minato just taken down that demon soldier and saved his life? Minato walked over toward the demon soldier's magic stone. Why was it here in Sibia? He had hunted every single one of them down yesterday, yet they were reappearing. Unless this was a sign of a pre-disaster. The situation seemed more tense than Minato had anticipated. Remembering those tragic, death-filled memories, Minato still couldn't help but shiver, but even if the catastrophe happened again, he was determined to save everyone. Meanwhile, Jun's two lackeys looked at each other. He just took down that demon soldier, right? Is that really the Kusanagi from before? Jun suddenly punched the wall in frustration. How could he show his face if Zuka found out about this? In fact, at that very moment, Zuka was hiding behind a rock, having witnessed the entire scene, including Jun wetting his pants. Back to a few minutes ago in another corner, other students were facing off against magic beasts. But they were only low-tier beasts. Zuka easily used first-tier magic to wipe them out. The students watching from the sidelines cheered excitedly. That was amazing. Truly Mizuha Zuka. Hearing their praise, she let out a reluctant sigh. They were wide-eyed over just that. These commoners were really only good at bootlicking. Well, she was a genius after all, so what could she do? But right at that moment, Bao! Zuka saw Jun's group dragging Minato away into a corner. Remembering how Minato was being bullied, Zuka couldn't help but frown in contemplation. Finally, she looked at the others and spoke up. I'll leave the rest to you all. She quickly followed after that group. She just couldn't let it go, could she? So Zuka hid in a dark corner, silently watching them until she saw a demonic soldier appear. Zuka's expression turned to pure panic. In an instant. This thing, there was no way that group could take it down. The more she thought, the more she panicked. Zuka clenched her fists. She had to do something. After all, she was a member of the Mizuha clan. Finally, Zuka ran out and shouted, "Everyone run!" But before she could finish, a bolt of magic suddenly zipped past her, leaving her stunned. Boom! It exploded right in front of her. Smoke and fire filled the air, clouding everything. Once the smoke began to clear, the scene finally became visible. Zuka saw Minato standing there heroically. She frowned in surprise. That's Minato's magic. Zuka remembered him being so shy and having zero talent for magic. Now he seemed like a completely different person. She hadn't even heard him chant a spell. Magic without a chant. And he had taken down that demonic soldier so easily, with just a first-tier spell. The strength of a demon is determined by the number of magic stones it carries. That is also the principle behind their hierarchy. Regular magical beasts are 6th-tier demonic soldiers, are 5th tier followed by demonic commanders at 4th, and demonic generals at 3rd. Above that, the 2nd tier is the Demon King, and at the very top is the Demon Lord. The ranks that can cause damage to each type of demon are fixed. Every modern mage knows this. You need at least 3rd-tier magic to take down a demonic soldier. So how could Minato's 1st-tier magic? Zuka truly couldn't understand. While she was bewildered, Minato slowly walked toward where she was hiding. Zuka jumped in surprise and hurriedly pressed herself back into the shadows. But then she quickly reacted. Why was she even hiding? By the time Minato had walked a bit further, Zuka poked her head out to follow him. Unfortunately, Minato had already spotted her. He pouted and said, "Sneaking around watching people. That's your hobby, huh?" Zuka couldn't help but be stunned. She frowned and asked, "How did you know?" Minato shrugged indifferently and replied, "If you call yourself a mage, it would be strange not to notice." Even after Minato said that, Zuka was even more confused. Seeing her reaction, Minato let out a helpless sigh. "You guys can't sense magic, can you?" Having said that, he turned and walked away, leaving Zuka standing there in confusion. Once she snapped out of it, she ran after him. She hurriedly called out, "Wait a second, what is this? Explain yourself." Unfortunately, he had already vanished into thin air. There was no one in front of her anymore. The person she was looking for was now standing on the rooftop of a nearby building. Minato saw her looking for him and couldn't help but sigh. He scanned the area and whispered, "Guess I'll check one more time just to be safe." With that, Minato used his magic power to scan the surroundings. There were no more demonic soldiers, but there were still quite a few magical beasts left here. This situation was really starting to annoy him. If even someone like Jun, who is considered an excellent student, was wetting his pants, then the other students must be struggling quite a bit. Minato frowned, slightly deep in thought. Should I give them a hand? His barrier would cover the entire area around the Gasibia house. Thinking was doing. Minato quickly channeled his magic into both hands. In just a blink of an eye, 2 streams of magic appeared in the air. Then they shot off. It didn't take long before they enveloped the entire Gasibia house. Seeing the streaks of magic in the sky, Jun's group was immediately shocked and bewildered. They didn't know what it was. Even Zuka was no exception. She frowned and muttered, "Is that magic multi-purpose magic?" At the same time, in another corner, A pack of magical beasts had surrounded two students, their numbers so great that it terrified them. Just then, a magical beast lunged toward a girl with pink hair. The girl's face went pale with fear. She couldn't do anything at all. At that exact moment, in a life-or-death situation, a flash of magic suddenly appeared and tore through the body of the magical beast that was attacking her. The pink-haired girl, having just escaped death, was so scared her legs went weak and she slumped to the ground. The boy with her hurriedly ran over, asking anxiously, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" At the same time, whilst on top of a rooftop, Minato looked down and nodded with satisfaction. Good. Slaughtering them like this is actually kind of entertaining. But quickly he realized a problem with his magic. Sweat beaded on Minato's forehead because his magic didn't just kill the beasts, it shredded them into pieces. In just a heartbeat, fragments of magical beast corpses were scattered everywhere. Seeing this, Minato couldn't help but sigh helplessly. He had gone a bit overboard, hadn't he? He ended up wiping out most of them. How was the practical exam supposed to continue like this? Next time he really had to hold back. After a moment of silence, Minato used his magic to leap down from the height. He glanced around for a long time, and finally he nodded in satisfaction. It should be safe around here. Checking that everything was fine, Minato found a secluded corner to land. Although he didn't need to hide his skills too much, being too conspicuous was also a headache. As he thought this, he walked toward the other students. The instructor was currently examining the corpses of the magical beasts. After inspecting them for a while, he muttered in suspicion, "Why are there still so many beasts left over? The whole pack should have been taken out by now. To finish all these off with a single blow, the person who did this must definitely be a professional mage, plus deploying countless magic projectiles without an attributed spell. This can only be non-attributed magic. I've never seen anyone like this before." If not for this person, the situation would have long since spiraled out of control for the instructor. Firing multiple magic projectiles at once isn't a problem, but the thing is, there were over 60 bullets. There is no way a student could do this. While the teacher was lost in thought, a student unable to contain their frustration demanded to know why so many magical beasts were still lurking about. "We almost died, sir. It's your fault." The instructor didn't shy away from his responsibility. He bowed his head to accept the blame, his lips tight as he explained he had been informed that the police had cleared the whole pack out. "I should have double-checked with the school. I'm truly sorry for putting you all in such a dangerous situation just now." Hearing this, the students didn't know what to say, their expressions showing nothing but resignation. The girl who had been saved earlier spoke up tentatively. "Someone came to save us, didn't they?" The instructor shook his head slightly and replied, "I don't know either." The girl sighed in disappointment. "I see. I just wanted to ask so I could thank them." The instructor really had no idea who it could be. It certainly wasn't the police or any professional mages. Could it have been rogue mages? But he couldn't deny the truth that person had saved his students. From the bottom of his heart, he was incredibly grateful to this nameless mage. Minato the mage. The nameless mage in the instructor's thoughts was standing in the distance, smiling silently. After escaping the danger, the students finally calmed down and began whispering about the magic they had just witnessed. Minato looked around at everyone for a moment. "It looks like everyone is okay. That puts my mind at ease." At that same moment, a malicious gaze was fixed on him. It was Jun's crew. Even after a brush with death, these arrogant brats hadn't learned a thing. Minato sighed, feeling helpless. On the other side, Zuko was also secretly observing Minato. He took down a demon soldier with just first-tier magic, and that infinite-type magic too. Was that him? But fire magic and non-elemental magic. She didn't believe any student was skilled enough to use two elements at once, especially not Minato. Thinking this, Zuko felt a bit relieved. She was just overthinking things. There was no way a guy like him could use two elements simultaneously. The person who used the attribute-defined magic must have been someone else. It had to be. Still, that didn't change the fact that Minato had destroyed a demon soldier. She was left wondering what on earth he really was. Minato sensed Zuka's gaze on him, but he didn't react. Meanwhile, the two guys walking next to Jun finally snapped back to reality. One of them muttered in shock, "That thing that looked like a laser? That was Kusanagi's doing too, right? The other one immediately shook his head, denying it. No way, that's impossible. But the first guy was confident in his theory and spoke up hastily. But he did take down a demon soldier. These words made Jun furious. His face went black with rage. He gritted his teeth and snapped, "Hey, shut your trap before I kill you." The two, almost scared, shut their mouths and dared not say another word. Jun's gaze was incredibly vicious now. He raved madly. No way, that trashy fly is that strong. Something fishy is definitely going on. The other two, afraid to argue, quickly chimed in. Yeah, it really is strange, isn't it? He's just a coward, right? Hearing this, Jun was satisfied. He sneered. That dog is definitely up to something. You dare make a fool out of me, I'll make sure to unmask him. A little while later, school was finally over. Minato was heading home as usual, but he found his path blocked by a group of students, which left him slightly bewildered. The leader was none other than that arrogant brat Jun. He glared at him and said in a cold voice, "I've been waiting." Minato was truly at his wit's end with these punks. He sighed and said, "Are you guys tone deaf or just stupid? Instead of running around and crying to your parents, why don't you spend that time studying magic? That'd be more useful." This comment hit a nerve with Jun. He barked aggressively. "You don't have the right to speak, you lying scumbag." Lying? Minato was a bit confused. What was he talking about? Unconsciously, he snorted. Jun, infuriated, shouted, "Don't play dumb. How the hell are you able to use magic like that? You must be pulling some dirty trick behind my back." Minato watched him. His eyes filled with confusion. He basically had no idea what nonsense this guy was rambling about. Seeing him stay silent, Jun coldly ordered, "Follow me. I'm not letting a rat like you get away." As he spoke, the others moved in and stood behind him. Typical cowards, always sticking to their pack. Minato looked at the group of brats in front of him and indifferently shrugged. He said dismissively, "Why would I have to run, fa?" Provoked by his attitude, Jun roared, "Stop the chatter, you bastard. You can't use magic here, right?" As soon as he finished, he clenched his fist and lunged forward. In the blink of an eye, Jun's fist was inches from Minato's face, but Minato didn't even react. The guys following him quickly rushed in, throwing punches relentlessly. Jun, feeling incredibly smug, laughed. "Without magic, you can't do anything right. Even if you lick my boots now, I won't let you off die." Kusanagi laughed, his expression growing more and more twisted. But unfortunately, he couldn't even touch a single hair on Minato's body. Minato stood there calmly. His eyes were filled with contempt. Their pathetic strikes couldn't even reach him. Minato's mana was shielding him automatically. They could hit him until morning and he wouldn't have a scratch on him. Still, these flies are annoying. Minato thought he might as well pretend to be hit just to get it over with. So he tried to sit down on the ground, acting like he'd been struck by them. But just then, a loud voice suddenly rang out. "What the hell are you all doing?" "Huh?" The group was startled and looked back immediately, seeing Zuka standing there. Jun's face turned ugly in an instant, and he muttered under his breath, "Zuka!" Fearing Zuka might get the wrong idea, Jun quickly clarified, "No, it's not like that. We're just messing around with each other." With a cold snort, Zuka retorted, "I know perfectly well you're all ganging up to bully Kusanagi," she demanded. "You're all wearing the Magic Academy uniform, and yet you've turned into a pack of bullies like this. Don't you have any shred of conscience left?" Upon hearing this, the expressions of Jun's group turned ugly instantly. Jun's face darkened like a soot-covered pot. He gritted his teeth and glared at Minato. "This is all your fault. Now Zuka looks down on me." While Jun was seething, Zuka had already stepped forward and grabbed Minato's hand. "Let's get out of here, Kusanagi." The sight of them holding hands burned into Jun's eyes. It pushed his rage to the breaking point. Deep down, he was already cursing Minato's entire bloodline. Seeing Jun's face, his two lackeys were paralyzed with fear, not daring to step in and calm him down. Finally, Jun couldn't hold it in anymore and snapped, "Damn you, Kusanagi Minato!" Minato sighed helplessly. "This guy is like superglue, isn't he? Always sticking around and won't let go." At that very moment, Jun was completely furious. He channeled magic into his hands and roared, "You son of a I'm going to kill you." Seeing this, Zuka panicked and shouted, "Tanato, what are you doing?" But Jun had lost his mind. He and his lackeys launched a coordinated magical attack toward Minato. Zuka grew increasingly frantic and screamed a warning, "It's dangerous." At that exact moment, a massive explosion erupted in front of them, filling the sky with smoke and fire. Zuka couldn't help but cover her eyes, assuming Minato had been consumed by the flames. Jun laughed triumphantly. "Even if you cheated 10 more times, you wouldn't survive this. You brat." His 2 lackeys, however, were terrified and stuttered in panic. "Oh God, this is bad, really bad. Is he actually dead?" Jun snorted, acting as if it were natural. "You idiots! What are you so scared of? We just accidentally used magic outside of school and lost control for a second. Kusanagi just happened to be standing in the line of fire, that's all." But just as he was gloating, a low voice suddenly echoed from within the smoke. "You guys have gone way too far." Jun jumped in surprise and looked back. A figure slowly emerged from the hazy smoke. Minato stood there completely unharmed. He glared at the punk in front of him and said coldly, "I thought you were just a bunch of kids, so I let it slide. But I guess stupidity always has to be paid for with a price. It's time I taught you all a lesson." Seeing this, Jun's face turned ghastly. He screamed in terror, "You're still alive? How are you still standing after taking all that magic?" Even Zuka, standing behind them, was just as shocked. Before they could even recover, Minato was too lazy to explain, and said coldly, "I could overlook it if it were just me. But you dragged Zuka into this too. You're truly rotten to the core, kid." Jun bit his lip, refusing to yield, and shouted, "Both of you are the ones at fault. How dare you make a joke out of me? We will attack until the 2 of you are nothing but skeletons." As soon as he finished, magic gathered in his hands again. Minato remained calm and simply snapped his fingers. A tiny bit of magic was summoned by him. Seeing the mini version of a magic circle in front of him, Jun sneered, "Ha! What kind of pathetic magic is that? Like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You're done for this time." Immediately, they all attacked Minato at once. Minato, however, remained completely composed and muttered under his breath, "Drain mana." The moment he finished, vines wrapped in magical energy suddenly appeared in front of them. They moved like giant pythons, twisting through the air, and lunged straight at Jun and his gang. Without a second of delay, they tightly bound them, making them shriek in terror. "What the hell is this? Let me go!" But before long, they collapsed to the ground like deflated balloons, completely drained of all strength. Seeing this, Minato retracted his vines. Without the vines to support them, Jun's group fell flat on their faces. Minato was a bit surprised. "I only drained a tiny bit of mana and they're all wiped out already. I guess this is enough to teach them a lesson, right?" Witnessing this scene, Zuka was even more stunned. What kind of magic was that? What just happened? Why are Jun and the others unconscious? While she was lost in thought, Minato grabbed his bag and prepared to leave. Seeing this, Zuka quickly shouted to stop him. "Hey, wait a second." She pressed Minato with questions. "What was that magic? What just happened? You shouldn't have been able to use magic that skillfully, right?" Zuka just kept on, firing questions at Minato, no different from an interrogation. Minato felt she was becoming a real nuisance. He snorted coldly. "Instead of interrogating me like that, shouldn't you be saying something else?" Zuka knew what Minato meant, turned her head away stubbornly. "I'll give you credit because you just saved me. Thank you. They're happy now, answer me." But before she could finish, the person in front of her had vanished without a trace. Zuka yelled in frustration. Where did he disappear to this time? Seriously. That night at the old city, the area was quite gloomy. A figure used magic to glide through the dark sky like the wind. Afterward, he quickly landed on a high-rise building in the city. This person was none other than Minato. He was in disguise, still wearing his familiar hoodie. Minato used magic to scan the surroundings because he felt quite uneasy. Just as Minato suspected, even though he had killed all the monsters that afternoon, the place was crawling with them again. Is this a bad sign, I wonder? If it's just these monsters, Minato could handle this all on his own, but he can sense them in other places too. This is probably too much for the police to handle, and while the magic police aren't exactly great, he can't just kill them all. Monsters in Japan. Minato realizes he needs to come up with a plan for this. After thinking it over, Minato decides to start by wiping out the monsters in the immediate area. He needs to be careful not to draw too much attention. With that, Minato uses his magic. He leaps down, ready to start taking out the magical beasts. Barrages of wild magic rain down from the sky, wiping the monsters out instantly. Just then, down on the street, a drunk guy is stumbling along. He doesn't notice the monster right behind him. The beast lunges at the man immediately. In the nick of time, Minato appears and slashes it down, moving as fast as the wind. Sensing something zip past him, the drunk man turns around to look, but he doesn't see anyone. He thinks he's just hallucinating, but in reality, Minato had already quickly dodged to the side. The drunk man just continues on his way home. Minato confirms he's safe before leaving the area, but he fails to notice someone in the distance recording the entire scene. The guy posts it on social media with a smug grin, thinking, "If this doesn't go viral, I don't know what will." The next morning, in the Magic Academy principal's office, another teacher is present. He looks at the students in front of him and says in a stern voice, "We've received reports that students were seen using magic off campus. If that's true, the school will be forced to expel those students." The students they are talking about are Minato and Zuka, along with Jun's group, who were also called in. Hearing this, Jun immediately plays the victim. "What do you mean, sir? We didn't use any magic. Kusanagi is the one who came looking for trouble with us." Minato is honestly stunned by such shamelessness. This guy lies without even blinking. Truly impressive. Minato can't just stay silent anymore. Even though he's the one being dragged into this, he has to explain himself. But before Minato can even do anything, a loud shout rings out. Lies. That one word leaves both him and Jun's group completely stunned. The person who spoke up is none other than Zuka. She points aggressively at Jun and blasts him. Kusanagi was being bullied by Tadano, and his friends Tadano's group used magic first. The teacher frowns upon hearing this and asks, "So you mean Kusanagi used magic too?" Zuka retorts defiantly. "That was legitimate self-defense. He didn't do anything wrong." Minato is a bit surprised. This girl is actually pretty righteous. She didn't lie about a single thing, but Jun's skin must be 8 times thicker than concrete. Even after being called out like that, he still stubbornly denies it. "We didn't do anything wrong either." Zuka, growing even more annoyed, snaps, "Just shut your mouth already. What kind of person bullies others and then dumps all the blame on them? Have you lost all sense of shame?" Jun is scolded like a dog, but he still stiffens his neck and argues, "Kusanagi, he's not worthy of being here. I'm just taking out the trash." Zuka glares at him, her face filled with disgust. "You're the one who isn't worthy of being here." Jun retorts, refusing to back down. "I'm at the top of the class. I'm the only one who can stand on equal footing with you, not that trash Kusanagi." Zuka isn't having any of it. Frustrated, she yells, "Stop talking nonsense." Jun still refuses to concede. He steps right up in front of Zuka and says firmly, "Open your eyes. Stop defending that loser. Look at me. Be my woman." Zuka looks at him. His eyes are full of sincerity. But unfortunately, Zuka doesn't care for it at all. She scoffs coldly, "Keep dreaming, kid." In an instant, it's like Jun is thrown into an ice cellar. He freezes up completely. As if that weren't enough, Zuka hits him with the reason for her rejection, calling him a bully and too violent, which makes him so angry he passes out cold. Minato watches this and can't help but reflect, even though he knows Jun deserved it. That was still pretty brutal. Right at that moment, the principal speaks up. It seems this was the fault of Tadano and his friends, and Kusanagi was only acting in self-defense. "We do not harbor those who use magic for personal vendettas. All of you will be expelled." Jun's 2 lackeys panic upon hearing this. "No, please. We were just following Jun's orders." The principal refuses to listen. Minato is left to suggest, and Zuka returned to class. The 2 of them left the office immediately. Zuka was out of the room, but her dissatisfaction remained. She couldn't stop grumbling about that person. It had been a long time since anyone had done that to her. "I just got so annoyed." Minato walked beside her. She asked suspiciously, "What's going to happen now that they've been expelled?" Zuka pursed her lips and said dismissively, "They won't be able to become mages anymore, obviously." "Well, that's clear enough," she said. Zuka suddenly turned her head and glared at Minato, snapping aggressively, You have to stand up for yourself." Minato felt a bit helpless. He was planning to do that, wasn't he? But she had already done it for him. Seeing him not reply, Zuka suddenly looked flustered. Minato frowned, thinking for a long moment. Suddenly silent, he spoke up. "Now that you mention it, how many times have you tried to save me?" In class, when Minato was dragged into a fight, Zuka had stood up to help him, and now this as well. She had actually stood up to testify for him. Thinking of this, Minato smiled at her. "You're really kind, huh?" Minato's words made Zuka blush from embarrassment. She hurriedly ran off. "Shut up already, I'm leaving." Minato watched her back and smiled faintly. "So cute." At this moment, he remembered something. Kusanagi Minato was dead, and Ichikami Minato was who he was reincarnated as. Was that kid bullied to death? Or was it just a normal car accident? Minato didn't know, but surely they were guilty. He hoped this would be settled. At the same time, in the principal's office, 2 more students appeared along with a girl's clear, melodious voice. So there were students using magic outside of school, and some students were dragged into it. The principal nodded slightly and replied, "That is correct. But no harm was caused to any civilians," the girl said. Hearing that, she asked suspiciously, "Then why did you call me here?" The principal calmly replied, "The student involved is Mizuhara Zuka." The girl froze for a moment, and then she spoke up. "I understand. Thank you for telling me, sir." After speaking, she turned to leave. The principal didn't stop her, casually suggesting, "Please send my regards to your father." The girl didn't turn back, calmly replying, "Don't worry, sir. My father will still continue to invest in the school." The 2 quickly walked out into the hallway. The boy next to her finally spoke up. "If what he said is true, this Kusanagi guy must be strong." The girl lowered her voice and muttered, "Fighting multiple mages at once, I could barely do it. You couldn't win unless the gap in power is just too huge. Do you think that guy is stronger than us?" The 2 kept talking as they walked. Other students, seeing them pass by their class, looked back in admiration. The 2 of them didn't care at all. The girl's voice became serious. "First, I have to verify it. The abilities of the student Kusanagi Minato. Then I'll decide whether to expel my little sister." This girl is Zuka's sister, Mizuhara Ruka, a 3rd-year student in Class S. The boy next to her is Katsuragi Ryuji, also a 3rd year in Class S. Hearing her words, he nodded and said with a smile, "Sounds like a plan." Inside the classroom, Minato was sprawled on his desk, sighing incessantly. Now that everything had settled down, he had lost all his motivation. The sound of students exclaiming nearby caught his attention. "Look at that, so cool. Is that a dark mage?" "I know that guy." Minato frowned, suspicious. "A dark mage? Is that a noble clan? But then again, this doesn't have anything to do with you anyway." He sighed again, full of boredom. While Minato was sighing and groaning, the teacher came in from outside and called out, "Kusanagi, come here." And so Minato and a few other students followed the instructor to the testing room. The students who hadn't been tested last time would be tested right now. Zuka was also present. She narrowed her eyes looking at Minato. This time she would find out his true ability. But at that moment, her eyes suddenly widened in shock because she saw Ruka and Ryuji were there too. Ruka's eyes showed worry. Why is she here? Regardless, the test began just like that. A while later, it was Minato's turn. Minato hesitated in front of the magic measuring machine, frowning in thought. Last time, he had blown the machine up, so he probably had to hold back a bit this time. Thinking that, Minato only summoned a tiny bit of magic into his palm, then placed his hand on the testing machine. Controlling his magic at such a low level made him break into a sweat. The numbers on the magic measuring machine jumped quickly. Before long, Minato let go, bracing his hands on his knees and panting heavily. The instructor asked suspiciously, "Hey, are you all right?" He shook his head slightly to signal he was fine. The instructor glanced at the number the machine returned, hesitating before saying, "It seems we have the final result. Kusanagi Minato's attribute is none." Zuka heard this result with complete disbelief in her eyes. Ruka and Ryuji, on the other hand, weren't too surprised. It seemed they believed Minato wasn't that strong after all. But the surprise was yet to come, because Minato's magic level only showed 100. The students present immediately started whispering, "In our batch, that's the lowest, right? But not having a measurable attribute is considered rare, right?" Ryuji heard the gossip and couldn't help but sigh. Ruka, a bit impatient, immediately turned to leave. "Let's go. We're done here." The two of them quickly walked away as jeers erupted behind them. To think that even a re-evaluation would leave him this exhausted. "If your magic power is weak, there's nothing you can do about it," the instructor said, patting Minato on the shoulder to comfort him, afraid he might be feeling down. "Don't overthink it, Kusanagi. The amount of magic power you have doesn't define who you are as a person." The only person who didn't believe these results was Zuika. Something felt wrong. Minato was more than capable of taking down demon soldiers. You should have been able to use both fire and water elements. I've never even heard of someone being able to adjust their magical output like that. What on earth was Minato doing back there? Contrary to everyone else's reaction, Minato was extremely satisfied. The result was absolutely perfect. It went exactly as he had planned. All Minato needed to do was control his magic power to a very specific amount. But even so, he was exhausted and gasping for breath. Fortunately, he managed to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. A moment later, out in the hallway, Minato walked alongside Zuika. He asked, "You were at the evaluation too, Mizuha?" Zuika nodded slightly. "I was just a bit curious." But before long, the two were blocked by someone. It was Ruka and Ryuji. Minato didn't know them and muttered in confusion, "Who are you two?" Ruka immediately introduced herself. "I am the eldest daughter of the Mizuha family, Mizuha Ruka, and this is Katsuragi Ryuji. We are both Namba." Hearing this, Minato frowned suspiciously and asked hesitantly, "What do you want from us? I have no interest in you whatsoever," Ruka said with a cold huff. She then stepped forward. Seeing this, Zuika immediately grew anxious, her body trembling instinctively. Very quickly, Ruka reached her and she spoke coldly. "Seems like you're nothing compared to those who break the rules, huh?" Zuika lowered her head, not daring to face her sister. Ruka didn't let it go that easily and continued, I heard you were saved by some guy whose magic power barely reached 100. Is that really true?" Zuika hesitated for a long while before whispering, "It's true." Hearing this confirmation, Ruka shouted, "Drop out, Zuika!" Zuika, feeling resentful and dissatisfied, asked, "Why do I have to do that?" With a light huff, Ruka said coldly, "Have you ever beaten me?" "Not even once." Zuika was stunned. Ruka was right, whether it was academics, sports martial arts, or even the use of magic. Zuika had never surpassed her sister. Ruka stepped closer, pressuring her, and spoke sternly, "You aren't suited to be a mage. Just me is enough." The more Zuika heard, the worse her expression became. She wanted to refute it, but couldn't get the words out. Ruka didn't budge and continued with her demand. "All you need to do is listen to me. Leave here and go find just any random school to attend." Zuika trembled slightly, her eyes welling up with tears. She clearly wanted to object, but lacked the courage. Seeing she didn't answer, Ruka asked, "Do you understand?" Zuika clenched her hands into fists. She was struggling internally. Just when she was about to give in, Minato interrupted. "That's a bit too rude, don't you think?" Ruka glared at him. She spoke in a cold voice. "What did you just say?" Minato wasn't afraid at all. He replied calmly, "You just keep talking without caring to listen to what the other person wants to say. If that's not rude, I don't know what is." Ruka scoffed, speaking coldly. "This is a private family conversation. Outsiders like you shouldn't stick your nose into it." Minato pouted. "You call that a conversation? You're just ordering your sister around." This comment angered Ruka, and she shouted discontentedly, "What did you say, you brat?" Minato faced her calmly and said, "Forcing others to do things against their wishes is a taboo you shouldn't commit. It's the same as telling someone else to give up on their dreams." Ruka still didn't think she was doing anything wrong and huffed coldly. "My sister doesn't have the talent to be a mage. Not even once has she beaten me." Zuika stood nearby, her face full of sorrow. Just as Ruka said, she wasn't much of anything. For so long, she had been deluding herself that she was a genius with enough talent to succeed, while she hadn't once surpassed her sister. But just as Zuika was falling into despair, Minato spoke up with great confidence, "She will beat you." This statement left Zuika stunned, and she looked at him in disbelief. Even Zuika couldn't believe such a thing. Ruka frowned and muttered, "Beat me." She chuckled softly, and Minato calmly continued, "Of course not right now." Ruka glared at him, pouting with contempt. I know that much. Then how about we have a 2-on-2 sparring match in 2 weeks? Hearing this, Minato asked with suspicion, 2-on-2. Thinking he was scared, Ruka laughed mockingly. A minute ago you were spouting nonsense, but now you're tucked tail and running, huh? Minato chuckled coldly and pouted. Nonsense? I'm participating too senior. So what about you? He cast a glance at Zuika standing next to him. Zuika heard the proposal and was a bit stunned, hesitant for a long time without an answer. Zuika was internally struggling should she give up on her dreams or try to stand up and fight for once. After a moment of silence, she finally had her answer. She said firmly, I will participate too. Minato smiled with satisfaction. Then it settled. He looked at Zuika and said with a smile, If we win, you aren't allowed to bring that up again, Ruka said calmly, accepting the challenge. If we win, Zuika must leave here. I won't go easy on you two. You'd better prepare to face reality. With that, she turned and left. Ryuji followed her quickly, but before leaving, he waved a friendly goodbye to the two of them. A short while later, on the roof of the academy building, Minato and Zuika were there. Zuika suddenly spoke up. Kusanagi, I want to ask you a favor. Please, teach me about magic. Hearing this, Minato finally let out a sigh of relief. Ryuji quickly followed after them, but before he left, he gave the two of them a friendly wave goodbye. A little while later, on the rooftop of the academy building, Minato and Zuika were there. Suddenly, Zuika spoke up. Kusanagi, I need to ask you for a favor. Please teach me about magic. Hearing this, Minato finally let out a sigh of relief. Still curious about that, are you? Wondering why he was suddenly called up to the rooftop, Minato took a moment to think before slowly speaking up. I am just a weak mage with magic power no higher than 100. Are you sure you want someone like me to train you? With a calm nod, Zuika firmly replied, I know you're hiding your true strength. You must be much stronger than me. Minato was a bit surprised to hear this, but Zuika standing opposite him continued, You must know some way to become stronger. That's why I'm saying, I could beat her, right? Minato sighed helplessly. These people all want to resolve everything. That's why he had nudged Zuika to suggest a sparring match, but he couldn't just say that out loud. Seeing he didn't reply, Zuika immediately bowed to him and pleaded, Please! Minato had no other choice but to agree. Fine, fine. In an instant, Zuika shouted happily, Are you sure? Minato nodded slightly and warned, But you have to do everything I say. And you can't quit halfway through either. Zuika agreed without a moment's hesitation. Okay. Of course, that's a yes. Minato looked at her reaction and couldn't help but smile. When she begged like that, who could refuse? Besides, from now on, she would need to prepare a bit more. Teaching a mage probably won't be too bad, right? Thinking this, Minato spoke up slowly. Then we'll start today. About the training spot. Before he could finish his sentence, Zuika timidly suggested, Can we go to my place? And so, that afternoon, Zuika led Minato to her residence, a villa. As soon as he arrived, Minato couldn't help but exclaim, This villa is huge. Zuika didn't think it was a big deal. She said nonchalantly, My dad is an aristocratic mage, so this is normal. Come to think of it, this was the first time she had invited a boy home. Does Minato find it weird being invited here? She didn't have any strange intentions, though. The more she thought about it, the more embarrassed Zuika became, not daring to look Minato in the face. Just then, Minato suggested, Let's get started. Zuika heard him call her by her name. Zuika immediately panicked and shouted, Why are you calling me by my name? Minato didn't see the problem and said nonchalantly, Your sister is Mizuhara. So if I called you that, how would I know who I'm talking to? Zuika realized she had been overthinking it. Seeing her reaction, Minato asked, If you don't like it, what do you want me to call you? Zuika shook her head slightly and replied, It's fine, just call me Zuika. Seeing it wasn't an issue, Minato suggested, Then let's begin. First, I want to ask you, what exactly is magic power? Hearing the question, Zuika answered confidently, That's easy. It's the energy inside the body, the foundation for forming magic. Minato didn't say if it was right or wrong and continued, And what about incantations? Zuika replied calmly, A type of program that helps convert magic power into magic. Minato asked again, Then can you increase your magic power? Zuka shook her head confidently and replied, "That's impossible. A mage's maximum magic capacity is determined at birth. Once you reach a certain age, your magic power won't increase anymore." After answering, she laughed smugly. "Hey, what do you think? I answered perfectly, right? Everything you said is completely wrong." Minato snorted coldly. Zuka stared at him in utter disbelief. Minato sighed helplessly. How could modern mages be this ignorant? What on earth happened 50 years ago? With no other choice, he decided to patiently explain. First of all, magic power isn't just inside the body. It exists all around us. Incantations are simply tools. They just support your magic, and you can absolutely take the initiative to increase your magic power, you know. Zuka gasped in surprise. That's impossible. If that were true, wouldn't all the magic academies be useless? Shrugging indifferently, Minato said coldly, "Right now, you don't need to believe me yet. I'll just teach you about the 3 things I just mentioned. Sit down." Zuka obeyed and sat cross-legged on the ground. Minato said nonchalantly, "I'm going to channel magic into you. Tell me when you can feel it." Zuka asked skeptically, "You can actually sense magic power?" Minato replied casually, "If you can't do that, you'll never get stronger. Close your eyes, here we go." As soon as he finished speaking, Minato placed his hands on Zuka's back. He began to channel magic into her body, but Zuka had no reaction. Minato increased the amount of magic channeled. Just as he thought, she still couldn't feel anything. Zuka suddenly shouted, "My back is getting hot. I feel something." Hearing this, Minato pulled his hand away and sighed, saying, "That was just a taste of basic magic power." Zuka looked at him intently confused and muttered, "So this is what you meant when you said to sense magic power?" With a calm nod, Minato said nonchalantly, "Exactly. You have to memorize this feeling. Once you can sense it, you'll be able to recognize it and find the source of magic power in nature. Use that as your goal." Zuka winked and laughed. Hey, I am a daughter of the Mizuhara family after all. I'll be able to do it in no time." Minato rolled his eyes unimpressed. It took that much magic for her to notice. It seemed like Zuka really didn't have a talent for being a mage. 1 week later, still at Zuka's villa, just as Minato had predicted, Zuka was currently in despair and screamed, "This is impossible." Minato was also very frustrated. It had been a week. They had practiced so much, yet this girl was such a slow learner. Even so, the tournament was almost here. Thinking of this, he decided to offer, "I'll channel magic into you one more time." Saying that, Minato placed his hand on Zuka's back, channeling his mana into her body. A moment later, he spoke up. "All right, open your eyes now." Zuka followed his instruction and slowly opened her eyes. In the blink of an eye, her face was filled with astonishment. She exclaimed with joy, "I can see it. So this is what mana looks like." Seeing the mana swirling around her hands, Zuka became even more surprised. "This is amazing. Am I really seeing mana right now? Hold on. If that's the case, you should be able to see my mana now too." Thinking this, Zuka glanced over at Minato, but she couldn't see anything at all, which left her a bit puzzled. Not knowing what she was thinking, Minato offered some praise. "Well done, Zuka." Flattered, she smirked and replied, "It's nothing really." Minato didn't comment on that. He just said calmly, "Now that you can sense mana, it's time to move on to mana control. I want you to cast magic using only the necessary amount of mana. Cut out all the excess and just focus on efficiency. Push your mana to the limit. Once you've drained it, recovering will actually increase your total capacity." Minato explained that now that she could sense mana, Zuka could maximize her mana reserves. The more she heard, the more surprised Zuka became. Seeing her reaction, Minato sighed and asked, "Is this different from the basic theory you learned at school? It's fine if you don't believe me. I believe you." Before he could even finish, Zuka said firmly, "I have no reason to doubt you anymore." Minato couldn't help but smile slightly. He then suggested enthusiastically, "In that case, let's move to the next stage. Step back, Zuka. Let's do some live combat training." As soon as he finished, he took off his jacket and threw it on the ground. Zuka, equally excited, responded, "Bring it on. I've been wanting to see what you're truly capable of anyway." Right after that, she quickly cast her magic, a first-tier water wave spell. A surging wild torrent of water rushed toward Minato. Unfortunately, he just lazily raised a hand and a defensive barrier instantly appeared, blocking the water completely. Seeing this, Zuka cried out in shock. He blocked it! At that moment, Minato spoke slowly. First-tier magic nullification shield. If you can't even break through this, don't even think about hurting me. Angrily biting her lip, Zuka cast an ice bullet spell which zipped rapidly toward Minato. He just stood there, his barrier deflecting it easily. Minato calmly reminded her, "You have to keep moving when you use magic. Standing still while facing a mage is basically asking for death." Irritated by his words, Zuka cast magic again, but it wasn't long before her mana ran dry, and she collapsed onto the ground. Minato walked over and sat down beside her. He sighed and said, "You're wasting way too much mana. If you could just adjust your output properly, you wouldn't even need incantations. You can use magic as long as you have mana. Watch this." As soon as he finished, Minato cast a spell. A fireball appeared and flew rapidly toward the straw dummy in front of them, but it didn't do much damage. He slowly explained, "That was your way of casting." Next, Minato pumped more mana into his palm. It was another fireball, but this one was much more powerful, incinerating the dummy instantly. Only then did he continue, "And this is mine." Zuka, who had been watching closely the whole time, finally asked in confusion, "Was my mana being scattered?" Minato nodded slightly and replied, "Exactly. You can cast magic. Quo, without any incantations at all, as long as you can control your mana." Zuka frowned, muttering, "In other words, I don't need to recite spells anymore. I think I get it." Minato slowly continued, "Now you have to learn to shorten your incantations. Once you master mana control, you won't need them at all. Shortening them is a huge advantage in real combat, and you won't waste any mana on all those extra words." Hearing this, Zuka frowned again, muttering, "So that means it makes my magic stronger, right?" "Exactly." Minato nodded in confirmation, then suggested, "Let's start again." Zuka couldn't help but panic. "Already?" Minato closed his eyes and smiled. "Otherwise, what's the point? Train like your life depends on it. Go." Hearing that, Zuka suddenly felt uneasy. A few hours later, Zuka was completely exhausted, lying flat on the ground. Minato sat next to her and asked with concern, "You still alive? From now on, we're only going to practice like this, got it?" That evening, Minato went about his usual routine of patrolling the city. This time, it was Harajuku. He scanned the area with his mana to check, and just as he expected, this place was crawling with monsters too. Even though he had been wiping them out constantly, the numbers didn't seem to drop at all. What the hell is going on here? Just then, Minato suddenly sensed something. A child was cornered by a demonic beast in the distance. He rushed toward the scene immediately. Without a second of hesitation, he struck the monster down. Minato glanced at the child and asked with concern, "Hey, are you okay?" But instead of answering, the child raised a camera to take a picture of him. Unfortunately, Minato was a step faster. He used magic and vanished in a flash. Once he reached a safe spot, he let out a sigh, taking pictures so blatantly and without even saying thanks. What's wrong with people these days? I really need to get a mask for next time. After that, he headed back home. The following afternoon after school, Minato and Zuka returned to the villa. They continued their training. As usual, Zuka was the first one to collapse. She lay on the ground, panting heavily. The next afternoon after class, Minato and Zuika returned to the villa to continue their training. As usual, Zuika was the first one to collapse. She lay on the ground, gasping for breath. Minato stood nearby, feeling helpless. With only a few days left until the practice match, she was making progress, but in every aspect, she still couldn't compare to Ruka. There was no way Zuka. She would have a chance to win if things kept going like this. Thinking of this, he suddenly spoke up. Sometimes giving up is an option too. Upon hearing this, Zuka lowered her head, but very quickly after, she stood up and whispered, "I'm always being compared to my sister. I can't beat her in anything. I've been forced to give up too many things already, but magic is the only thing she refused to give up." Minato narrowed his eyes and said without hesitation, "But like this, you won't be able to win." Zuka didn't give up and suggested, "Then let's train harder." Minato smiled involuntarily, then frowned. "I won't be holding back." "That sounds good," Zuka said, excited. She didn't give up at all, and so Minato taught Zuka even more, and then the two of them sparred continuously, until Zuka was out of breath and stopped. A few days later, Zuka was finally able to hold her ground for a long time. Minato smiled with satisfaction and said, "You've passed." Hearing that, Zuka happily shouted, "I finally did it." Minato also praised her, "Well done, Zuka." Zuka was delighted to be praised. All her hard work had paid off. A few days later, the day of the practice match finally arrived. Minato and Zuka stood in front of the training ground, but the scene inside left them both stunned. The training ground was packed with people. The moment the reporters saw Zuka walk in, they swarmed toward her, shoving microphones in her face and firing rapid questions, leaving Zuka bewildered and frozen, not understanding what was happening. Minato frowned slightly and remarked, "Just for a match between students, so that's enough to understand the importance of noble magical lineage." It wasn't just reporters. There were also many students there to watch. Seeing this, Minato couldn't help but say, "Don't you think this is a bit much? Magic battles are rare. It feels like a major event." But after Minato finished speaking, he didn't hear a response. He turned his head and saw Zuka, cowering in her seat. Just then, a loud shout echoed from afar. "Both contestants, please head to the ring." Zuka jolted and stood up intending to run, but Minato saw she wasn't doing well and quickly called her back. "Zuka!" Zuka, feeling anxious, asked hesitantly, "What is it?" Minato smiled, looking at her encouragingly. "Go get him." Zuka froze upon hearing this, and then she smiled. The look of self-confidence had returned to Zuka's face. She said firmly, "Of course I will." Immediately after, she stepped toward the training ring. As she walked, she thought, "Minato is truly mysterious." His words echoed in her chest. Very quickly, Zuka stood before Ruka. Ruka narrowed her eyes and said in a stern voice, "So you didn't run away?" "Of course not," Zuka said confidently, with a light scoff. Ruka pouted in contempt. "How countrified. Do you really think you have a chance to win against someone like me?" she said. She arched her brows, looking at Zuka with confidence. She seemed certain of victory. Zuka didn't back down and shouted aggressively, "I will definitely win." Zuka, the sister, heard this and couldn't help but click her tongue in disbelief. "It seems you've made some progress in these 2 weeks, huh?" Zuka didn't answer. She knew her sister was very strong and the power gap between them was truly massive, but Zuka wouldn't admit defeat. Just then, a shout echoed, "We would like to begin the match immediately." Both Mizuhara sisters entered their combat stance. Zuka was the first to summon her magic. She shortened her incantations to save magic power. At the same time, Ruka wasn't idle. She also summoned her magic. Minato, watching from the outside, couldn't help but remark, "Ruka must know the basics of a battle between two mages." Ruka is too worried and forgot to move. She lost the advantage of fast casting. Just as he thought, in the blink of an eye, Ruka the sister had closed the distance. Both unleashed first-level water magic. 2 surging waves collided instantly. However, because her magic power was weaker, Zuka's water wave was quickly dispersed, and she was also struck by Ruka's water wave, but she managed to deflect it. Ruka was stunned. She negated it. She's getting stronger. Even Ruka couldn't help but remark, "Only 2 weeks and you've gotten stronger than before." Hearing this, Zuka was immediately happy. This was the first time she had been praised by her sister. Seeing her reaction, Ruka asked with dissatisfaction, "What's there to be happy about? It's just a simple comparison. I'm not praising you." After that, Ruka's gaze became more determined, and she said coldly, "Now I'll raise the magic level." After saying that, she once again summoned her water waves. Zuka didn't dare to be careless. She hurriedly summoned magic to defend. In a split second, second-level water magic appeared. It danced continuously in the air, then split into small water bubbles. Then they crazily rushed toward Zuka. Zuka couldn't defend and was sent flying by these water bubbles. Her body fell like a kite with a broken string to Minato's feet. Glancing at Zuka, Minato felt helpless. In terms of casting speed, Zuka's chances of winning were higher, but her opponent was simply stronger than her. While he was thinking, Ruka walked over from afar and said coldly, "Pathetic. So you aren't planning to help the kid? You protected her before, right? No need." Minato replied without hesitation, leaving Ruka so shocked her eyes widened. Just then, Zuka stood up from the ground, but her body was still trembling uncontrollably. Ruka was even more shocked. She couldn't believe it and shouted, "How I attacked you with second-level magic! How are you still standing?" Biting her lip fiercely, Zuka said firmly, "I won't lose. Magic is the only thing she has. Even if she loses everything else, she won't give up." As soon as she finished, Ruka summoned her magic. Ruka the sister scoffed coldly and also quickly summoned magic to defend. In a blink, the two water-type magics clashed fiercely, but very quickly Zuka weakened. She kept repeating one sentence, "I will definitely win. I won't give up." After that, she fell to the ground powerless. The result? The battle was decided. Zuka had exhausted her magic, and the victory belonged to Ruka. Zuka lay trembling on the ground, her hands clenched into fists, muttering in frustration. "I couldn't do anything. Nothing at all." Minato sighed helplessly and walked over to help Zuka up. "This fight was about controlling magic power. You just lost on pure magical output this time," Ruka coldly remarked. "Do you get it now? That girl has no talent whatsoever. Kusanagi, you must have been thinking the same thing, right?" Minato replied indifferently. "True, she doesn't have talent. Zuka is clumsy, progresses very slowly, lacks ability, and is even weaker in actual combat. But there is one thing that I'm very satisfied with. Regarding Zuka, it's that she works incredibly hard and trains like a complete idiot." Zuka looked at him in surprise. Ruka, however, didn't care and pouted. "And this is the result." Before she could finish, Minato coldly cut her off. "She did lose, sure, but I happen to like hard workers like Zuka." This statement moved Zuka to tears. It was the first time someone had acknowledged her efforts. Minato didn't pay any mind and continued, "Zuka is my student. I find it very hard to tolerate it when you talk bad about her." Ruka grew increasingly agitated, tears streaming down her face. Ruka scoffed coldly and said with disdain, "For someone with a magic level of 100, you're acting pretty full of yourself." Note, this line is a continuation of the previous one in the source. Shrugging indifferently, Minato confidently spoke up, "And that person with magic at level 100 is going to defeat you." Ruka was provoked by him, her face showing signs of irritation as she sneered, "You've got a sharp tongue, I'll give you that. Fine, I don't want to waste my energy on a bottom-tier opponent like you." Ryuji then excitedly chimed in, "Finally, it's my turn to step out." Ruka brushed past him and coldly commanded, "Finish this quickly." Ryuji chuckled and nodded. "Need no reminding." On the other side, Minato had carried the injured Zuka back to their seats. He placed her on the chair and said calmly, "Focus on my match now." Zuka nodded slightly, signaling she understood. But right at that moment, she realized an issue: her body didn't hurt anywhere at all. Her wounds had already healed. Minato didn't know what she was thinking. He slowly walked onto the stage. Even though he had bragged earlier that a magic level of 100 was enough to take down Ryuji, in reality, if he didn't give it his all, he stood no chance of winning. He would keep his magic level at 100, use zero system magic and no incantations. He also wouldn't set up any magical barriers, so if he took one direct hit, he might just get taken out of the game entirely. The more he thought about it, the more exciting it felt. Ryuji saw Minato step onto the stage and immediately shouted with excitement, "Sorry, kid, I'm not planning on going easy on you." Minato couldn't help but smile, pouting as he replied, "That's fine. In that case, I'll go easy on you." In the blink of an eye, the arena erupted. Cheers were echoing non-stop. "Ryuji, don't go too hard on him. Be gentle with the kid." On the stage, Ryuji had unleashed his own magic. Minato estimated it was around 8,000 to him, before it would have been like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. But now he could only use about 100 magic power. Instantly, the second match between Minato and Ryuji officially began. As Ryuji chanted his magic, he laughed and said, "Don't hold a grudge against me." With just this one attack, it's enough to test whether Minato really is the person who defeated those expelled students. Ryuji wanted to see if he could withstand this full-power attack of his. Yet before he could even launch the move, a flash of magic struck right in the middle of Ryuji's forehead. Minato sneered with contempt. "Too slow." This scene left the students in the stands, stunned. It hasn't even been 3 seconds and it's already over. Because Ryuji had passed out, the victory went to Minato just like that. Ruka rushed over to check on Ryuji's condition. In her heart, she couldn't help but be shocked. Minato knocked Ryuji unconscious with just one hit. She didn't even hear him chant a single spell. What the heck did he do? While Ruka was still thinking, Minato's voice laced with mockery came through. Ruka, I did exactly what you wanted. Ended it nice and quick, right? Zuka, watching from outside, was overjoyed and shouted, Amazing! He actually managed to take him down! Ruka at this moment glared at Minato and spoke in a cold voice. It seems you do have a bit of talent after all. Minato didn't care and joked, Better than you at least. Still can't keep your mouth shut, can you? Ruka gritted her teeth in anger and cursed, then directly unleashed all of her magic power. Minato estimated it was only about 10,000, but it was still stronger than Ryuji's. While the two were locked in a standoff, the announcer's voice rang out again. A shocking event has occurred. After the second match, the fighting style of the contestant Kusanagi has really captured the audience's attention. The final match will be between Minato and Ruka. Everyone is looking forward to seeing who will be the one to claim victory. As soon as the match was declared to start, Minato didn't hold back and attacked Ruka. Ruka on the other side didn't panic. She calmly summoned magic to counter. Minato knew perfectly well that his magic power was only around 100, so naturally, the spells he used weren't very strong. Because of this, if Minato didn't aim directly for Ruka's forehead, he wouldn't cause her any injury at all. Ruka also realized she shouldn't move around too much, but rather focus on defense. Just as Minato expected, Ruka defended with ease. She stood still in one spot and used water waves to attack him. A barrage of sharp knife-like jets of water surged toward him crazily. Yet the next scene left Ruka completely shocked. Minato had easily shattered all of her magic without losing a single strand of hair. Ruka stared with wide, amazed eyes. You haven't even used any magic this whole time, have you? What on earth is that kid doing? Not only the students in the stands, but the audience is just as confused, whispering and murmuring about whether he's about to get hammered, and how he isn't even wet. What exactly is going on here? Ruka, on the other hand, isn't surprised. She's just trying to figure out what technique Minato used to pull that off. Having her attack broken by him, Ruka is fuming, convinced he's hiding some kind of trick. With that thought, she strikes again, but this time Minato moves as if he's dancing through the air, gracefully dodging the water projectiles she keeps firing. Seeing this, Ruka's eyes widen in disbelief as she shouts, You dodged all my attacks without even using magic day. Zuka, watching from the sidelines, can't help but frown. A mage would usually use a counterspell to neutralize the attacks. Everyone knows that if you can't do that, getting hurt is only a matter of time. A second-tier technique has such scale and speed, there's no way a guy like him could dodge all of it. Not a single scratch. Zuka is certain Minato is just reckless. Minato seems to know what she's thinking and smirks slightly, but it doesn't matter. As long as you can sense mana, dodging these basic attacks isn't a problem, though it does require a bit of nerves of steel. Right now, Ruka has started casting a third-tier water spell. In the blink of an eye, a water bolt like an arrow appears and aggressively lunges toward Minato. Seeing this, everyone in the stands immediately gasps, Third-tier magic. If that guy gets hit by that, he'll be reincarnated before he even knows what happened. Boom! The water arrow explodes directly, water splashing everywhere in the air. Ruka collapses, exhausted. Zuka smiles, thinking, how could he possibly block that? But at that exact moment, a beam of magic strikes the center of her forehead from afar. Upon seeing who launched it, Ruka gasps in shock. No way, how are you still fine? How did you dodge that? Minato calmly replies, I used a spell to absorb your magic and I simply stepped right through the center of the attack. The air goes deathly silent. Ruka sits there stunned for a long while without reacting. Just when Minato thinks she won't say a word, she suddenly throws her head back and laughs. Just stepping through it, huh? So does that mean I lost? Naturally, the result is clear. Victory belongs to Minato. Zuka rushes over to ask, are you okay? Minato nods and replies, yeah, we're both fine. I won, you know. Zuka smiles faintly and nods, her eyes full of appreciation. Seeing the two of them happy, Zuka stands up from the ground and says coldly, as promised, I will. I'll not mention this matter again. Do whatever you want. Hearing this, Minato can't help but sigh, thinking, still so arrogant, huh? He suddenly jokes, "Ruka's wounds are actually quite shallow. You were going easy on me, weren't you? It would have been great if our match had been like that too." Ruka immediately shouts back in protest, "No, I wasn't." Minato refuses to comment further and adds, "Zuka has really become stronger just in these 2 weeks. You must have noticed it too, right? Don't be so overprotective of her." Ruka at this moment firmly promises, "I will definitely become stronger so that you won't have to worry about me anymore. I promise." Ruka narrows her eyes looking at the two of them, and after a long hesitation nods, "Yeah, you're right." Because of this battle, the two Mizuhara sisters have become closer. Minato watches them feeling happy for some reason. Just then, black clouds and a terrifying aura suddenly swarm the sky, startling Minato. He quickly looks up, his expression turning grave in an instant. This abnormal mana, is it a natural disaster? Ruka and Zuka realize it too. Their faces turn pale. At the same time, in the classroom, Jun's group is rummaging through Minato's desk, throwing his belongings all over the floor. Jun's underlings search for a long time, but find nothing. Annoyed one says, "He's only got books and notebooks. This guy, he's been acting so tough lately, man." Jun grinds his teeth and mutters, "There has to be something here. Otherwise, how could he have used that kind of magic?" Just then, an underling spots something. He immediately gasps, "What the hell is that?" Jun, hoping he found something, rushes over, but what he sees leaves him terrified. The sky outside is stained a horrific bloody red. The three of them are instantly panic-stricken, as if realizing something. One underling screams in terror, "It's a natural disaster. How could it be a natural disaster?" Outside the arena, the reporters and students are in a complete frenzy. Nobody expected a disaster to strike the Magic Academy. Minato's expression is grim now. How could a disaster happen right at this moment? Don't tell me. And that this has something to do with the incident in Shinjuku. The first disaster happened in Shinjuku too. Is this just a coincidence, or is there some kind of plot? While he's thinking, magical beasts emerge from a hole in space. The students see them and start running in a panic. The instructor is present, frantically trying to calm them down. But in a moment like this, who could possibly stay calm? Right then, a powerful burst of magic strikes the beasts attacking the students. The person behind the attack is none other than Minato. He screams, "Everyone stay calm." Your voice brought the students back to silence. They were still panicked, but they stopped running. Minato was very pleased to see them standing still instead of fleeing. He scanned the group and warned them. In the early stages of a disaster, only low-level monsters appear, so it's best we evacuate to the gym as discussed. He looked toward the three of them, Yuka and the others, and suggested, "You guys should go too." Hearing this, they cried out in shock. "What are you planning to do, Kusanagi?" Minato calmly replied, "I have to rescue the people trapped in the buildings." The instructor looked at him bewildered. Worried, he asked, "You're going alone? You're being too reckless." Ryuji quickly added, "I'm going too." "Well, that should be fine then, right, sir?" The instructor was still hesitating, but then Minato raised an eyebrow and continued, "You have already seen what this kid is capable of, right?" The instructor hesitated for a long moment before nodding. "I understand, but don't overdo it, okay?" Ryuji chuckled and replied, "How could I possibly die?" Saying that, he glanced at Minato. Minato didn't say a word, just gave an indifferent shrug. Minato then looked at Yuka, saying, "Well then, I'm off." A look of worry appeared in Yuka's eyes. She whispered, "Be careful." Meanwhile, Ryuji spoke up. "I'm heading out first, kid. My current speed allows me to run at 10 meters per second. Let's see if you can keep up with me, Minato." Ryuji, however, was overthinking it. Minato instantly summoned his magic and took off, zipping past Ryuji like a flash of lightning. He smirked and teased, "I'll go ahead, senior." Ryuji's eyes widened in shock and he grumbled in frustration. "What kind of monstrous speed is that? Hey, wait up." Immediately after, he sprinted after him, but even his best speed wasn't enough. "I'll observe this kid's true potential down to every last detail." Of course, he would save people along the way. Minato didn't care about Ryuji. He moved, while using his magic to scan the entire academy area. There were 58 people capable of using magic in the building, but it was possible some could no longer use it. In that case, he would have to check every single floor carefully. Inside the student building, magic beasts had already swarmed in, and students were trapped in their classrooms unable to escape. Minato jumped in through a window and saw this scene. Without a moment's hesitation, he used magic to wipe out the beasts. His magic was incredibly powerful. Everywhere it passed, monsters fell. While Minato was focused on killing the beasts, inside the classroom one tried to ambush him from behind. It was as if Minato had eyes in the back of his head. He casually released a burst of magic power that tore the beast's body to shreds. Not long after, Ryuji ran in panicking. "Hey, is everyone all right?" But by then, Minato had already wiped out all the monsters. Their bodies were piled up in the room. He walked past him and said coldly, "I'll leave the evacuating of the trapped students to you." Ryuji couldn't help but panic, rushing to say, "Hey, wait. Going alone is dangerous." But there was no one behind him anymore. He grumbled discontentedly. Where did he go? How is he that fast? Ryuji wondered if Minato thought he was a burden, and honestly, what else could he think? It was probably true the kid took out those monsters in under a second. Who on earth is this kid? Minato didn't know about these thoughts of his. He was still running like crazy. If he were outside, he would use magic bullets to take them out in one hit, but in an enclosed space, he might accidentally hurt someone. So he had no choice but to keep using low-level magic to take them down. But that was enough. Minato easily took down the beasts with low-level magic, and he also rescued many people. Although it would be a bit time-consuming if he kept bringing the rescued students to the gym himself. But he had someone helping him, right? Ryuji had been trailing behind the whole time, but at this moment, he was fighting monsters outside, boldly shouting, "I'll take them all out. You guys hurry to the gym." Yet just as Ryuji finished speaking, a cry of surprise suddenly rang out, making him jump. What was happening? When he looked back, he saw a group of students being enveloped by magic and slowly lowered to the ground. Ryuji frowned in silence. What is Minato doing? And exactly who is this guy? Minato, looking down from above and seeing Ryuji's reaction, smiled. He's actually pretty worried about his juniors. Things should be fine, right? Just then, he seemed to sense something. In a secluded corner of the building, a female student was trembling in fear because she was surrounded by monsters. She leaned against the wall, tears streaming down her face in terror. The student couldn't do anything. She was helpless in this situation. She could only scream for help. "Someone please save me." In the nick of time, a flash of light suddenly zipped past, making the student's eyes widen in amazement. She realized this flash of light was exactly the same as the one that had saved her before. While the student was still bewildered, Minato landed from midair and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" The student recognized Minato and stammered, "Kusanagi, were you the one who saved me?" Yeah, that's right." Minato gave a slight nod, then reached out to pull her up. The female student asked again if it was him who saved her during that practice class. Minato hesitated for a moment before speaking, admitting that some unexpected things had occurred at that time. Upon hearing his answer, the girl bowed, feeling truly grateful. "Thank you for saving my life twice now." Minato dismissed her thanks, smiling nonchalantly. "It's nothing, really. It wasn't anything major." Facing the person who had saved her twice, the girl suddenly felt her heart fluttering. Her cheeks turned bright red. Just then, Ryuji ran up from below, shouting, "So who's the next person that needs saving?" Minato glanced at the girl and instructed, "Just follow him and you'll reach a safe place. I'm heading out." The girl still wanted to call him back, but he had already dashed away. Even Ryuji looked frustrated. Minato didn't care what they thought. He kept running upward. There were still quite a few students trapped. "Can't wait for the police to show up. I have to do something now." Meanwhile, at the Prime Minister's office, high-ranking officials had gathered due to the disaster that had just struck the Kamui Magic Academy. The Prime Minister sat at the head of the table and spoke sternly. "A disaster has occurred right at the Kamui Magic Academy." The officials nearby began whispering among themselves. "Why is this nightmare happening to us? We haven't recorded any disasters since the last one 50 years ago. What are we supposed to do?" The Prime Minister said gravely. "We are currently trying to coordinate with the Magic Beast Division of the City Police, as well as the Noble Mages. The Ground Defense Forces are also on high alert." The senior officials weren't satisfied, arguing back. But the mages in the defense forces only specialize in natural disasters. What do they know about fighting magic beasts? The Prime Minister understood this, of course. This was the consequence of living comfortably, without worrying about facing disasters. We have no choice but to rely on the police and the noble mages. The more he thought, the tighter his fists clenched. A disaster from 50 years ago, yet it was happening all over again. But Ichikami Minato is no longer here. Who will save them now at the same time? Oh, a police car was rushing toward the Magic Academy. The policewoman driving asked suspiciously, "Did a disaster really occur?" A deep, cold male voice replied, "Yeah, there's no mistaking it." The policewoman heard this and panicked. "But we've been at peace for so many years." So was this peace just temporary? Inspector Sidasugo smiled slightly and said, "That doesn't matter. After all, that's exactly why we're here." The driver, Sergeant Sandra Karen, hesitated for a moment before saying, "I'll do my best." Immediately after, the two sped toward the scene. Simultaneously, a helicopter appeared in the sky above the Magic Academy. It wasn't reinforcements, but reporters. They were broadcasting the situation of the magic beast attack to everyone in the country. The reporters already present at the academy had been evacuated to a safe location, and they were reporting live. Meanwhile, instructors and students who could use magic outside were trying to take down low-level beasts. News of this disaster was a hot topic. Everyone was glued to the screens, anxious about the current situation, which was indeed dire. Areas neighboring the Magic Academy were also being attacked by beasts, and the nearby residents were in a total panic. The situation was now beyond the government's control. The people of Japan were all looking toward the Magic Academy, waiting for news from the media. Some were worried because they lived nearby. Others were terrified that the disaster would repeat itself just like 50 years ago. In short, all of Japan was sinking into panic. At the Magic Academy, Minato was still relentlessly taking down beasts to save people. But the beasts kept swarming into the school in massive numbers. It was almost time for the second stage to begin. In each stage, new and stronger monsters would appear. Furthermore, they would keep spawning continuously. No matter how many we kill, as long as the core remains alive, there will always be beasts lurking around. The core will only reveal itself in the final stage. Minato had to hold out until then. The more he thought about it, the more annoying it felt. Truly, a disaster like this is such a drag. After saving people from the monsters, Minato used magic to teleport them to the floor below. This time there were 20 people. Everyone was scattered everywhere, so just the rescue effort alone was difficult. But Minato didn't plan on giving up. He ran back to the upper floors to continue. At the same time, inside a classroom, Jun was struggling to fight off the invading beasts, but his magical power wasn't enough. Before long, he was panting for breath. He gritted his teeth and muttered, "Damn it, I can't attack anymore." Because when he attacked them, it wasn't just ordinary beasts. There were also demon soldiers. They were all terrified to the point of almost wetting themselves. Jun still couldn't accept it and shouted, "That Kusanagi guy took one down in just a single hit. Why can't I do what he does?" As soon as he said that, a voice full of contempt sounded behind him. "Because you're weak as hell." Jun's eyes widened immediately. Before he could even see who it was, a brilliant blaze of fire was unleashed, directly reducing the demon soldier to ashes, right before the horrified eyes of the other three. At that moment, Tisai-jun looked closely at who had made the move. It was the very person he least wanted to see Minato. After the strike, Minato didn't say a word and turned to leave. Jun bit his lip fiercely. Again. He had been saved by him once more. He couldn't accept it, and rushed after Minato, shouting, "Stop right there!" Minato paused his steps. Jun angrily demanded, "Why did you save me? You're supposed to hate my guts." Minato just shrugged indifferently and replied, "No reason. I saved you because I could. That's all." Hearing those words, Jun's body trembled. He bit his lip and muttered, "You saved me. Because you could. Is that really all you have to say?" But Jun couldn't accept such a simple answer. He roared aggressively, "Quit screwing around. You're nothing but a weakling, the weakest of the bunch." He spat. "You never used proper magic before, so how could you get this strong this fast?" Minato squinted at him and spoke coldly. "Kusanagi Minato died in a traffic accident. I've just been reborn in his body." Jun couldn't believe it and shouted, "What are you saying people can get stronger after coming back from the dead? I'm supposed to be the strong one here. Why am I losing to a guy like you? Strong, huh?" Minato scoffed coldly. He narrowed his eyes and said in a chilling voice, "True strength isn't about picking on those weaker than you. And the truly weak don't go around humiliating others to feel better about themselves. You've been swallowed up by your own arrogance, blindly believing you were strong." At this point, Jun didn't even dare to think about fighting back against Minato. Minato walked away, leaving Jun standing there all alone. Before long, Jun collapsed to the ground, crushed. He realized he had been running from the truth he hadn't grown an inch stronger since middle school. Jun had taken all his frustrations out on those weaker than him, but now he couldn't accept the fact that Minato, the one person he considered the absolute weakest, had saved him. Jun's two lackeys were in a tough spot. They had been saved by Minato as well, and they wanted to ask Jun what they should do, but he was far too broken. Tears streamed down his face, tears of regret and humiliation. Minato, of course, had no idea how they were doing. He was busy dashing ahead, desperate to slay magic beasts and save more people. The higher he climbed, the more high-level beasts he encountered. Demon soldiers appeared, but Minato didn't panic at all. He calmly used magic to attack, but the demon soldier dodged his first strike. Minato didn't stop there. He channeled higher-level magic. Boom, in an instant, flames erupted, and the demon soldier was consumed by a sea of fire. Minato narrowed his eyes at the pile of ashes. His face remained emotionless, but he thought to himself, "The number of demon soldiers is increasing. That means the boss will show up soon." With that thought, Minato approached the students huddling in a corner and reassured them, "Stay calm, everyone. You're safe now." At that same moment, Ryuji down below was shouting in total frustration, "You little brat, dumping all this trouble on me." Even though he was complaining, his hands never stopped casting magic to eliminate the beasts. There were just so many of them, constantly chasing and attacking the students. As Ryuji protected the students behind him while fighting off the beasts, he glanced at them and said, "I'll protect you all, so don't worry, just follow me." The students were in awe of his cool, mature demeanor, but even as he talked big, the place was swarming with beasts. What were they supposed to do? While he was panicking, Minato dropped down from midair and said coolly, "Let me help you out." Ryuji jumped, startled, and yelled, "Scared the hell out of me. Don't just pop out of thin air like that." Minato didn't care to explain, just saying, "Run as soon as I'm done taking care of these guys." Ryuji hesitated, looking confused. But with this many, how could a kid like you? Before he could finish, a brilliant blaze erupted, burying the monsters in a sea of fire. The one who did it, of course, was Minato. This scene left all the students, and even Ryuji, absolutely stunned. Seeing that, Minato immediately urged them, "What are you staring for? Let's go move it." Ryuji finally snapped out of it and hurried to lead the other students away. As he walked, Ryuji kept looking back, seeing Minato just wave his hand and wipe out the beasts chasing them with pure magic power. Ryuji was more and more terrified. It was incredible, truly impressive. This kid is legit amazing. Minato kept his focus on blocking the remaining beasts. After taking them all down, he looked around. "Looks like everyone's gone. I should probably go back and do another sweep." Elsewhere in another corner of the academy, the instructor and the students with high magic power were struggling to hold the line. Zuka was there too, but by now, she seemed to have run out of magic. She was weak and swaying about to collapse. Luckily, Ruka caught her. Ruka said coldly, "If you can't do it, get inside. Go, you're just getting in everyone's way." Ruka immediately shook her head. "I can still fight. We don't have time to rest." Ruka frowned, wanting to advise her otherwise, but not knowing what to say. He could only watch as she tried to attack the beasts. Just then, Ryuji arrived with the other students. "I've brought the stranded students back." The instructor saw this and praised him. "Well done. Get them inside quick." Ryuji tasked someone else with running over to the Mizuhara sisters to check on the situation, while Ruka sighed helplessly and said they could barely hold them off any longer. Zuika asked suspiciously, "Where's Kusanagi?" Ryuji chuckled. "Don't you worry about that kid, he's still breathing and going absolutely wild over there." "Really?" Zuika let out a sigh of relief upon hearing that. Ryuji didn't dwell on it and began casting magic alongside everyone else to attack the magical beasts, though he didn't stop running his mouth for a second. That kid Kusanagi is seriously impressive. With him here, getting through this disaster will be a breeze. Zuika nodded in agreement. I think so too, Senior. With Kusanagi, we're definitely… Before she could finish, the ground suddenly shook violently, causing everyone to panic. The instructor shouted, "Evacuate, evacuate immediately," because right in front of them, there were too many magical beasts, and they weren't just low-level ones. They were demon soldiers. Ryuji panicked instantly, yelling, "There are too many! We have to get out of here!" Hearing this, everyone turned and ran. Ryuji and the Mizuhara sisters were no exception. They stood no chance against the swarm of beasts before them. However, they hadn't run far when Zuika suddenly sensed something. She glanced back and saw the magical beasts being hit by spells, blood spraying everywhere like rain. The three of them stood there stunned, wondering when. The magical police had arrived. The lead inspector Sugo shouted urgently, "Wipe them out! Prioritize the safety of the students!" Soon the other officers began attacking the beasts. Seeing this, the students behind them finally let out a sigh of relief. They had finally been saved. While killing the beasts, Sugo yelled to reassure them. "Don't worry, we'll get you all out of here. Follow the instructions and evacuate immediately." But Zuika stepped forward. "We'll help you." Sugo looked at her in surprise and insisted, "You civilians should head to the gymnasium." Before Zuika could reply, Ruka cut in. "We aren't civilians. We're mages." Sugo hesitated for a long moment before nodding. "All right then, help us out. We're attacking from the seaward side." Honestly, the reinforcements were so sparse that they had no choice but to rely on them. Just look at how pathetic the police force was. How did it get this bad at the same time? Karen was busy healing other students. Elsewhere on the academy rooftop, Minato saw the police cars arriving and whispered with a sigh of relief. "The police are finally here. Leave the rest to them." "But it seems like the police got here before the ground defense force, huh? After all, this is a national-level disaster. How could a country be this unprepared?" "Well, who knows? That's very possible. This country has been resting on its laurels for too long anyway. For now, just do your best. Check if there are any other students trapped." At the same time, high up in a helicopter, a reporter saw the whole scene below and began her broadcast. It seems the police have arrived. However, the number of magical beasts shows no sign of decreasing. The entire nation is waiting for the aristocratic mages to appear. After all, situations like this require them to step in. Everyone was waiting for the aristocratic mages to help. The people believed they would show up soon. The reporter on the scene looked directly into the camera and screamed, "Please, aristocratic mages, show yourselves." But inside the Fuyuka family estate, hearing the butler's report, the head of the house spoke coldly, "Leave them be." The butler hesitated. "Are you sure, sir?" The Fuyuka head scoffed. "The police are enough to handle a minor disaster like this. No need for aristocratic mages like us to lift a finger." Saying that, he stood up to leave. The butler asked suspiciously, "Where are you going, sir?" "To sleep," the Fuyuka head replied coldly. The butler had no further comments, bowed respectfully, and said, "I wish you a good night, sir." Meanwhile, at the Magic Academy, Sugo was struggling against the beasts, but the situation was going south. He looked at his subordinate and asked, "Can you handle the ones near the entrance?" The other man shook his head. "No, there are too many." Sugo's expression turned grim. They were appearing faster than he had anticipated. "We won't make it in time to evacuate the civilians. Securing the outer perimeter was the most important thing, and we still can't get in touch with the aristocratic mages." The more Sugo thought about it, the more frustrated he became, and he couldn't help but yell, "Damn it, where the hell are those lazy people? When we actually need them, we can't rely on them, and we end up depending on students who are still in the academy. It just goes to show how pathetic Japan's military force is right now." Sugo frowned fiercely. He had read about this before. It was called a disaster, and there's a reason for it. Did the people of Japan face something like this in the past too? And if the insect type appears now, we're finished. No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than the ground shook again, terrifying everyone. Sugo bit his lip in frustration. There is no way that demon general is the boss, right? Zuka's face turned grim. That monster rarely ever appears in this area. and only a noble mage would have enough power to take it down. Ruka knew full well it would take at least a level 5 spell to defeat it. But here, no one can use high-level magic like that. While everyone was panicking, a brilliant flame struck. Ruka didn't hesitate to shield Ruka, and she collapsed right in front of her. This left her in absolute panic, her eyes filled with worry. Ruka lay on the ground, her body trembling uncontrollably. She looked up at Zuka and whispered, "Run away, Zuka." But Zuka was frozen, sitting there. Her legs wouldn't move. While everyone else had panicked and fled, Zuka hugged Ruka tightly, her eyes filled with desperate pleading. Sugo and the magic police were trying their best to hold out, but they were no match for that magical beast. Ryuji was already too weak to do anything more. But then a figure emerged from the raging flames and everyone's expression turned grim at the sight. They seemed to have accepted their fate, that they would die here. Zuka kept hugging Ruka, shouting desperately, "Kusunagi, please save us, Kusunagi." The fire was blazing, rushing straight toward the group. Zuka shouted even more desperately, "Minato!" The heat was drawing closer and the monster was preparing to attack, but at that moment, the monster suddenly froze. It saw something blocking its path. A massive amount of magic power descended from the sky, attacking it all at once. A figure appeared in front of Zuka. It was Minato. He said seriously, "Sorry I'm late. You kept waiting, didn't you?" Zuka. Upon seeing him, Zuka was instantly relieved, but Ruka's condition was terrible. Her tears started streaming down again. "Kusanagi, Minato walked over to check and finally spoke. "She'll be fine. She just passed out." Having said that, he placed his hand on her body and began to heal her. Zuka was still anxious, silently bowing her head in anticipation. Minato healed her for a long while, before gritting his teeth and standing up. Seeing this, Zuka was startled and called out to him. Minato glanced at her and said calmly, "I'll handle this pest." Zuka was stunned for a moment, but quickly nodded. "All right." Immediately after, the entire area was shielded by a protective barrier. Zuka was startled and amazed. "What is this?" Zuka's wounds were healing rapidly as well. She was even more amazed the more she looked. The other students were feeling this kind of magic for the first time. They were completely shocked. Korin emerged from inside and saw the scene, her eyes widening. "This is a level 3 holy healing spell. Even I can't use that, who could?" Immediately after, she ran over to Sugo, asking anxiously, "Senior, are you okay?" Sugo shook his head slightly and replied, "I'm fine, just a little overexerted." Karen rushed over to help him up, then scanned her surroundings and asked, "What is going on?" Sugo shook his head helplessly. "I'm not sure, but we must protect the citizens until our very last breath." Karen couldn't help but hesitate in confusion. "That's too dangerous. You could lose your life out there." "Senior," Sugo gritted his teeth and said firmly, "but if we don't do something, every citizen here will die." Karen knew that, but she said worriedly, "This is impossible, though. In the end, everyone will. All of our forces have already collapsed." As she said, a corner of the academy was already engulfed in flames. The magic police had all fallen. Sugo gritted his teeth, his eyes full of anger. "The defense force or the noble mages, no one has come here. There's nothing left for us to do." The magic police had given up. The situation with the magical beast was getting worse. The smoke and fire grew more intense. The reporters at the scene couldn't help but panic. "No way, the police too, is this the end for us?" Those watching via live television were also extremely worried, all of them on edge. But at the scene, Minato was walking alone toward the monster. Seeing this, Karen immediately cried out in shock, "There's a student walking straight toward the demons. Does he want to die?" Sugo was just as panicked, shouting urgently, "Hey, get out of there quickly!" Unfortunately, Minato didn't listen. He quickly stood face to face with the monster. Minato said coldly, "You seem to like doing whatever you want, huh?" The monster squinted at him, its mouth constantly muttering, "Kill, kill." That deep, terrifying sound echoed throughout the area. It made the students there panic. Even Sugo and Karen were terrified. The pressure it emitted made everyone panic. Just at that moment, an earth-shattering explosion occurred. Minato coldly commanded, "Shut up!" The monster was struck by his attack and roared in anger. The low-level beasts immediately swarmed toward him. Minato frowned and stayed silent. When facing the world's Worst disaster, he had unleashed his full power. But this time he had to hold back a little because of the people around him. While Minato was thinking, lightning element magic power surged wildly toward him. In the blink of an eye, he was covered in lightning. Seeing that, Sugo panicked. Is he dead? Everyone around was watching, waiting to see if Minato was still alive. While everyone was in a state of panic, a burst of magic appeared, blinding everyone. This magic originated from Minato's hands dancing in the air and crazily annihilating the magical beasts. Seeing this, Sugo couldn't help but be terrified. What's going on? Who is that student? Not just them, but the reporters on the scene have also noticed Minato's appearance, yet they can't quite make out his face. The cameraman tried to get closer for a better look, but was hit by a magic attack, preventing him from reaching his goal. The one who struck was Zuka. Minato had been trying so hard to hide his true power, and yet now he can fight without having to hold back or be distracted. At the same time, deep in the battle, dozens of magical beams shot from both of Minato's hands, dancing endlessly through the air. Everywhere they went, the magical beasts collapsed. This sight left the inexperienced students in utter disbelief. They cheered, "He's amazing. Are we really saved? How is he doing that?" But they didn't have time to be distracted. Low-level beasts were still around. Thankfully, there were still others who could use magic to take them down. Sugo, fighting and shouting at the same time, reminded them, "We have to do something. We can do this. Let's go support him." Minato, currently battling the boss, heard this and couldn't help but smile. Seems like the cops of this era aren't too bad, he thought. With a flick of his wrist, those magic beams exploded. The boss was furious and quickly summoned a spell. Seeing this, Sugo panicked and shouted, "A level 6 magic spell. That's practically on par with noble-level mages. There's nothing we can do now. That magic." The boss was casting a level 6, Fire Dragon's Roar. Flames roared to life again instantly, throwing the students into a state of shock. The reporters on the scene were just as desperate. Sugo helplessly watched the fire rushing toward them. The flames were so brilliant, they threatened to swallow everything, glowing with a terrifying blood-red hue. The students were utterly hopeless. Even Karen could only pray to the gods to save them. Sugo figured that no matter how strong Minato was, there was no way he could defeat that thing. There was no way they would survive this. The only one who still believed in Minato was Zuka. She was certain he could do it. If it's Minato, he can definitely do it. Minato will surely survive and save everyone here. At that same moment, Minato was silently observing the demon boss in front of him. It's big, sure, but the bigger they are, the slower they get. This demon general, it's trying its hardest to use level 6 magic. Well, if I keep holding back my power, I won't get anywhere with it. Will I? I really didn't want to do this, but I have no other choice. Thinking this, Minato immediately reached out to summon 2 types of magic at once. In the blink of an eye, he unleashed his true magical power. Zuka stared blankly at the massive amount of mana dancing before her eyes. She was stunned to the point of wide-eyed shock, but even more so, she felt joy. Under the surprised gazes of everyone, a giant serpent, made of water, magic appeared. Sugo grew even more bewildered. Is this synthetic magic? At that same moment, the demon general's fire dragon charged fiercely. Minato's water serpent didn't back down, meeting it head-on. With a loud boom, the 2 powerful forces collided. They intertwined, fire and water, clashing intensely. The demon general below was frantically casting spells, mumbling incomprehensible words. "Slaughter the humans. Die." Immediately after, the fire dragon grew larger, rushing forward with fearsome momentum. Minato couldn't help but curl his lip in disdain. His giant water serpent then lunged toward the fire dragon, destroying it in an instant. But it wasn't over yet. The water serpent kept charging forward, and in no time it reached the demon general. The creature was just swallowed up by the water. Before it died, it could only mutter 2 words. "Why?" Minato watched it slowly vanish with a straight face. He scoffed, "Because you didn't practice enough, that's why." Although he said that Minato thought it could probably do more than just that, but it seems weaker than I thought. After the boss died, the Magic Academy returned to clear skies. Minato looked up at the sky and smiled. Looks like once the boss is destroyed, the disaster is gone too. At least now we can enjoy a little peace for once. Only then did the students recover. They realized they were saved and immediately began cheering and shouting, having escaped the gates of hell. Even the reporters, at the scene were no exception, weeping with joy. Karen sighed with relief. We're safe. The disaster had passed, but Sugo was incredibly stunned. He couldn't believe that a student like Minato could take down a demon general, something that even noble-level mages couldn't necessarily defeat so cleanly and quickly. Who on earth are you? But before he could even think, his legs went weak and he collapsed. He couldn't help but click his tongue. Looks like even my knees went on strike. Over here. Minato walked up to Zuka and smiled, saying, I did it. Zuka looked up at him, her eyes brimming with tears, and replied, That's right. I knew you could do it. Thank you, Minato. Don't mention it, Minato replied, shaking his head with a smile. While the two were talking, the other students rushed over, making Minato jump. Before he could even understand what was happening, he was surrounded by a crowd of students praising him to the high heavens. Minato sighed helplessly. Finally couldn't escape the fate of being the center of attention, huh? I can already see my future looking as gray as the sky was earlier. Seeing his reaction, Zuka couldn't help but smile. You look pretty annoyed. The next day, the media reported on the disaster at the Magic Academy, including the fact that the disaster was quelled by a mysterious student. But everyone at the academy knew that the mysterious student was Minato. After the disaster, the people surrounding Minato grew more numerous by the day. Every time he got to class, a bunch of them would crowd around and pepper him with questions, which really annoyed him. Of course, there were some who were disgruntled and spoke up saying, Looks like someone's got a big head now that they've got people kissing their ass. How could a student like him even be that strong? So those students started bickering loudly in class, splitting into two factions, one party supporting Minato and another that didn't believe him. Taking advantage of the noise, Minato slipped away outside. He was honestly way too overwhelmed by them. Just then, Zuka appeared beside him, laughing as she said, Rough day, huh, Minato? He replied coldly, Don't even start. Chuckling softly, Zuka teased him casually, You're the hero who protected everyone after all. So I guess there's no way around it, right? Minato brushed it off and changed the subject. You also got transferred to Class S, right? Giving a dull nod, Zuka replied indifferently, Probably because of that practice match and everything that went down recently. Minato furrowed his brow suspiciously, asking, Doesn't sound like you're too happy about it. Hearing that, Zuka immediately turned her head away, pouting as she muttered, Well, sure, but I mean, someone else is there after all. Minato didn't think too much about her comment. He followed up by asking, Come to think of it, how's your situation, Zuka? Zuka smiled and replied, She's doing well. Plus, we've gotten a lot closer lately. Zuka was genuinely happy about that. It's all thanks to you, Minato. Her eyes shimmering, she looked at Minato and gave a sincere smile, saying, Thank you. Meeting you here was such a stroke of luck. Hearing that, Minato felt a bit awkward and flicked her on the forehead. Leaving Zuka bewildered, she asked, What was that for? Minato pouted and replied, Once is enough, you don't need to keep saying it. Then turned and walked away. Zuka watched his back as he walked away, then smiled. Her maiden heart seemed to have skipped a beat. Meanwhile, at the Prime Minister's office, all the high-ranking officials were present. The Prime Minister was constantly on the phone with someone. After a while, he spoke up about this matter. The negotiations with other countries had officially come to an end. Someone asked skeptically, Finding the cause of the second natural disaster isn't easy, is it, sir? The Prime Minister nodded slightly and replied, They've done everything they can to try and deal with it, mentioning the rumors about the student who defeated that final insect-type monster. They kept debating the disaster and the fact that Minato had destroyed the demon general. Elsewhere on the balcony of the Magic Academy, Minato had been called up to the rooftop again. This time it was Ruka Ryugi and Zuka. The four of them just stood there looking at each other, the atmosphere heavy and silent for a long time, before Ruka slowly spoke up. Kusunagi, I have a favor to ask. Please take me on as your student. When she made that request, her eyes were full of determination. A few days earlier at the Mizuha family estate, the two sisters Ruka and Zuka were sitting outside. After a long silence, Ruka slowly opened her mouth. This disaster, she spoke suddenly, startling Zuka. Ruka didn't care, and calmly continued. It seems Kusanagi was the one who stopped the disaster this time, right? Hearing this, Zuka nodded and replied, Yes, that's right. Kusanagi defeated the demon general insect with 4th-tier composite magic. Ruka looked at her, unable to believe it, and asked skeptically, You're saying 4th-tier composite magic? That's the kind of magic that even high-level mages can't use, you know that, right? It's true. Zuka nodded with absolute conviction. Seeing her reaction, Ruka hesitated for a moment before saying, Well, I guess it must be true. How could my sister Zuka ever lie to me? Ruka asked, slightly surprised. Why do you trust that I wouldn't lie? Chuckling. Ruka replied calmly, Because from the time you were a child, up until now you've always been obedient. I never thought a child like that would ever be a useless mage, but I think I've relied on brute force too much. Hearing her words, Zuka was suddenly a bit melancholy, but then she jumped to her feet and declared firmly, I will definitely become stronger, so that I won't make you worry about me anymore. So please believe in me. Zuka was more determined than ever. Her reaction caught Ruka off guard, but she quickly smiled and said, You really? She have grown up, Zuka. Hearing this, Zuka's eyes lit up with joy. Zuka didn't say anything else. She was thinking about Minato. His power was just too terrifying. It was far beyond that of a student. It might even be stronger than her father's. Thinking of this, Zuka looked up at Ruka and said, Can you help me with one thing? Back to reality. Ruka was silently waiting for Minato's answer. She knew full well that if things continued the way they were, she would only ever be a high-level mage. To get stronger, she needed Minato's help. Taking a deep breath, Ruka spoke sincerely. I'm sorry for insulting you and looking down on you. I'm truly, sorry. She said she knew full well how selfish this request of hers was. However, she was willing to cast aside her pride to ask Minato. Ruka's tone now carried a hint of begging. She bowed her head, speaking in a low voice. Please allow me. But before she could finish, Minato coldly cut her off. Fine. The answer was so sudden it left Ruka stunned, unable to react. Minato repeated it again. I said I'd take you on as my student. Ruka was still quite confused, and she asked skeptically, Why? Now it was Minato's turn. He asked with confusion, What's so weird about that you're the one who wanted it? Ruka hurriedly said, That's true, but I've done so many terrible things to you. Shrugging indifferently, Minato spoke casually. Well, you already apologized, so... Ruka hurriedly said, It really is like that, but I've done so many terrible things to you. Minato indifferently shrugged his shoulders and spoke calmly. You've already apologized, haven't you? So, I've forgiven you, and besides, you were hoping I'd accept your apology anyway, weren't you? That's all there is to it. Ruka couldn't help but be stunned. Is that really such a casual answer? Just then, Ryuji quickly jumped in. Then count me in too. Minato, refusing to give an opinion, just pouted. Fine, fine. I can teach 1 or 2 more people, I guess. Seeing that Ruka was still confused, Suika immediately explained. He's just that kind of person, Sister Ruka. She squinted at Minato, secretly thinking to herself, he really is a strange kid. A while later, at the Magic Academy classroom, Minato and Zuika didn't know why they were summoned to this place. Standing before them were Inspector Sugo and Sergeant Karin. They bowed their heads to Minato, speaking sincerely. First of all, please let us thank you. If it weren't for you, both the ordinary citizens and us would have been completely wiped out. Minato couldn't help but feel frustrated. You guys have been thanking me since the interrogation. I think that's more than enough. Is there something else? Sugo nodded slightly and replied, The disaster investigation is over, but there are still a few things that concern us greatly. Minato was surprised and asked, A few things that interest you? Sugo didn't hide his motives. Kusanagi, you awakened your mage abilities after being in a traffic accident, right? The people around you gave the same statement, so there's no mistake. But after investigating, I heard someone say that after the accident, you were like a completely different person. Minato froze upon hearing this, a look of caution appearing in his eyes. Sugo didn't notice and continued, Your personality changed, and your power grew abnormally strong enough to even destroy a demon general. The more he spoke, the more confused the people there became. Zuika couldn't hold back her frustration and questioned, "Wait a second, what are you implying?" Sugo seemed to realize he had been indiscreet and muttered under his breath, "Let's change the question then. Do you know the identity of the Dark Mage?" Both Minato and Zuika were stunned. "What does that Dark Mage have to do with this?" Sugo slowly explained. "He is a mage who wiped out all the wandering magical beasts around here and helped other citizens under the cover of night. This video has been spreading all over the internet. Haven't you seen it?" Saying that, he handed them the video to watch, while Karen, standing to the side, seemed to have realized something. Zuika didn't. She frowned and asked, "And what does this have to do with Kusanagi?" Sugo calmly replied, "Because the two of them share several similarities in both build and age. They say the Dark Mage is a fairly well-known mage, but the magic signatures don't match. Not to mention the timing of his first appearance, perfectly aligns with the time Minato was discharged from the hospital." The instructor sitting nearby heard Sugo's words. His face turned pale, clearly looking very worried. Karen remained silent, not saying a single word. But Sugo kept rambling on about how using magic in the city without a permit is illegal, and because it has attracted so much public attention, the police have had to intervene. Zuika heard that he would be severely punished, and glanced at Minato. Her face was full of worry. Sugo also stared at him intently and spoke coldly, "If you confess everything, we promise to do everything we can to lighten your sentence. So answer honestly, are you the Dark Mage?" "No, I'm not." Minato shook his head confidently, denying it. Hearing this, Sugo smiled. He said cheerfully, "I see, so it's not you, huh? Well, that's good then." Right after that, Sugo and Karen stood up to say goodbye. "Thank you for your time. We'll be going now." The two quickly walked out the door. Only then did Sugo recall Minato's reaction. He wasn't even the slightest bit nervous. If he really were the Dark Mage, he'd have to have nerves of steel. Conversely, Karen, on the other hand, seemed convinced that Minato was indeed that mage. The atmosphere around him and his voice were identical. Could his secret actions in the dead of night have been purely to save the citizens? She couldn't tell Sugo about Minato's true identity, even though this could be seen as a failure for a police officer. He was a good person who had saved her. So the two police officers were experiencing completely opposite mindsets. Sugo wanted to dig up the identity hidden behind Minato, while Karen wanted to protect it. On another note, after the conversation in the meeting room, Minato and Zuika went to their class to report. The teacher stood on the podium and formally announced, "These are two new students, Kusanagi and Mizuhara. They will be members of our class starting today. Please help them out." Because Minato had defeated the demon general, everyone welcomed him very warmly. As soon as he sat down, a crowd surrounded him, asking question after question. Naturally, given her background, Zuika faced the same situation, making it a bit difficult for her to cope. Seeing the students in the class surrounding the two, the teacher couldn't help but say helplessly, "Everyone, please settle down. The class has already started." Minato really felt it was too much of a hassle. He had been interrogated from the moment class started until the break. This was exactly why he didn't want to stand out too much. Minato took advantage of the break to sneak away. Seeing the students in the SF class crowding around the two of them, the teacher couldn't help but say helplessly, "Everyone, please settle down. The class has already started." Minato really felt this was such a hassle. He had been interrogated from the start of class all the way through his break. This was exactly why he didn't want to stand out too much. During the break, Minato seized the chance to slip away. Just then, someone called out to him. He turned around suspicious and saw that it was the pink-haired girl he had saved from the magic beast the other day. She looked at him cautiously and spoke up, looking a bit embarrassed. "Kusanagi, could you come with me for a moment?" A little while later, on the academy rooftop, Minato was truly at a loss. "Seriously, here again. Is it some kind of trend now to call people to the school rooftop every time you want to?" I talked to them. To his surprise, Zuika was also there. She just wanted to find a place to practice on her own without anyone noticing. She didn't expect to run into Minato here. "And you're with some stranger too. What are you two doing here?" The pink-haired girl stood before Minato, hesitating as she asked if he remembered her. Minato shook his head, feeling a bit guilty. "Sorry, I don't." The girl wasn't surprised. She lowered her voice and said she was the one he saved during the recent disaster. That's when it finally clicked for Minato. He nodded and said, "Oh right, I remember now." The girl's cheeks turned bright red in an instant. She lowered her head, speaking timidly. "During the practice session, I was attacked by those monsters and I was saved by someone using magic. That magic. It was you, wasn't it, Kusanagi?" Minato recalled that practice session, but to him it was just something he did on a whim. But the girl was incredibly grateful and said, "Thank you for saving my life twice now." Minato gave a slight shake of his head and replied, "Don't mention it. I just did what I could." Even though he said that, the girl still spoke up shyly. "You're so cool, Kusanagi." At the same time, Suika was trying to eavesdrop on their conversation, but couldn't hear a thing. Just then, the pink-haired girl suddenly shouted, "Kusanagi, I like you. Please go out with me." Suika was stunned. Wait, a confession? Seriously? Even Minato, the person being confessed to, was just as startled. Seeing that he didn't reply, the girl continued firmly, "I know I'm not particularly special in any way, but I will try my best to improve myself, so please agree to let me be your girlfriend, Kusanagi." Minato stood there stunned and silent until the girl thought he wasn't going to answer. He suddenly opened his mouth. "Thank you for liking me." The girl was overjoyed, but her happiness didn't last long. Minato apologized, "But I'm sorry, I really don't have the time to think about dating right now. There is something I must accomplish." The girl lowered her head and muttered, "I understand." But quickly she looked back up, her face radiant once again. "Thank you for being so honest with me. I think I can let go of these feelings now." Saying that, "Sakyas," she turned and left the rooftop. Suika had been trying to hide behind the wall, but Minato had spotted her all along. He gave a cold huff. "And just how long were you planning to hide there, Suika?" Suika jumped, took a deep breath and poked her head out, speaking embarrassedly. "I thought I masked my mana perfectly." Minato pouted. "Your control is honestly terrible. Your mana is leaking out everywhere. This is the second time now you know. Do you enjoy stalking people that much?" Suika retorted. "I just happened to hear it wasn't on purpose, but hey, why did you turn her down? She's pretty cute, isn't she?" Minato pouted and said, "I'm not thinking about that stuff right now." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Suika standing there dumbfounded. What Minato actually meant was that the age gap between them was too large, even if they were in the same year of school physically. Suika looked at his retreating back, whispering to herself, "I see. So you won't be dating anyone at all, right?" But she suddenly realized something. Why did she feel so relieved hearing Minato say that? Suika thought to herself as she followed Minato downstairs. He won't date anyone, huh? While she was lost in thought, Minato suddenly turned back, catching Suika off guard. Minato said coldly, "Focus on refining your mana control. You're still way too sloppy." Suika finally snapped out of it, pouting, "I know, stop nagging." She would practice hard and become strong enough for Minato to finally recognize her. By nightfall, as usual, Minato went out to check the area. The monster count showed no signs of decreasing, even though the disaster had passed. Could this be a sign that another wave of disasters is about to hit? Just then, a loud scream pierced the night. "Help!" It was a girl's scream. Behind her, a mage was chasing her, sneering, "No one is going to be hanging around here at this hour to save you." But actually, someone was. Minato had stepped in front of the girl. The mage was visibly shaken. Before he could even collect himself, Minato punched him square in the gut. The guy went flying. Minato squinted at him, secretly huffing in disdain. "An amateur mage looking to do dirty deeds, huh? Your close-quarters combat skills are pathetic. You've probably never clashed with another mage before, have you?" The girl he saved looked at him with immense gratitude, but she quickly realized who was standing before her. She gasped in astonishment. "Is it really you, the black mage?" Before she could finish, Minato had already vanished. The girl who had been rescued looked at him with great appreciation, but she quickly realized who was in front of her. She exclaimed in shock, "Is it really you, the dark mage?" But before she could finish, Minato had already vanished. Ignoring the girl's desperate screams to stop him, Minato used his magic to teleport away. The black mage, the students at school, and even that guy Sugo were talking about it. It really must be me they're referring to. But why did I suddenly become famous? The next morning on the academy rooftop, Minato gathered with the three of them. He frowned and asked, "You mentioned that Sugo guy earlier, right? An amateur mage who likes to act all mysterious at night. Everyone's talking about him." "I was just wondering why," Ryuji replied while eating. "Probably because he's a trending topic online." Minato looked surprised and asked, "What's online?" This left the three of them stunned, and they started whispering among themselves. Finally, Zuika spoke up to explain. "The network is an information system that covers the whole world. You can find everything on it, so information spreads at the speed of light." After listening to the explanation, Minato finally understood. Ryuji pulled out his phone and taught him, "You can access it with your own phone, you know. You have one, right? Try opening Google or something." Minato fumbled with it and finally succeeded. He cheered. "I did it." Zuika and Ryuji clapped along. "He did it." Then Minato pouted. "That wasn't even hard." Seeing them acting so childish, Ruka couldn't help but sigh in frustration. She cut them off in a serious tone. "By the way, you promised to help us train. Remember?" "When are we starting?" Minato said happily. "We can start right after school today. Since you guys taught me how to use this smartphone and this thing called the internet, I'll do my absolute best to help you all out." Hearing this, Zuika suddenly felt a bad omen. And just as she thought, that afternoon after school, the four of them arrived at Zuika's villa for training. It didn't take long before all three of them collapsed. Minato shook his head helplessly. "Come on, we haven't even warmed up yet. You have to pour your energy into this, like your life depends on it." This struck a nerve. All three stood up immediately, each declaring with determination, "I can still take it, don't you underestimate us." Minato nodded, satisfied. "That's the spirit, now attack me." Immediately, the three of them rushed toward Minato. Meanwhile, near Tokyo Tower, an anomaly appeared. The nearby observers panicked and shouted, "I can't believe it! Just a moment ago, it looked perfectly normal. What on earth is going on?" The scene before their eyes made them tremble with fear as a swarm of magic beasts appeared near Tokyo Tower. Back at Zuika's villa, the three of them had quickly collapsed before Minato again. Seeing that, Minato raised an eyebrow and asked, "What's wrong? Giving up already?" "Not yet. Take this." The three immediately got up, fired up. They unleashed their magic, attacking Minato together. But Minato just created a protective shield that blocked everything. Moreover, he used his magic to flick the middle of Ruka and Ryuji's foreheads, making them yelp in pain. At the same time, Zuika seized the opportunity to sneak up behind Minato. She boasted, "Gotcha, a gap in your defense." "Not a chance." Minato smirked and stepped aside, dodging Zuika's attack. She was caught off guard and exclaimed, "He dodged it." Before she could recover, another flick of magic hit her forehead. The three of them were knocked down by Minato again. He sighed in relief. "All right, let's take a break." With that, the three of them went to sit down and drink water. After just a little while, they were drenched in sweat. Ryuji wiped his brow and said, But man, you're just way too strong, aren't you?" Ruka nodded in agreement. "Even I, the top student of the entire academy, couldn't even touch a hair on you." Zuika sighed and said, "That's right. This guy isn't even in the same league as a normal student anymore." She gave Minato a meaningful look. This look made him feel a bit annoyed. Too lazy to explain things over and over, he decided to give them a reason once and for all. "I almost logged out permanently in that accident, and as soon as I regained consciousness, I received this power. As for why, I have no clue, so don't ask me again." Ruka frowned, deducing, "So that near-death experience was the trigger for your power." Seeing their reaction, Minato let out a breath. These guys are as gullible as kids. The look on his face showed he had successfully tricked them. However, Minato didn't know that Zuika didn't believe him. She thought maybe he really has a reason to hide the truth, and since he went to such lengths to keep it secret, it's best not to pry any deeper into this. Minato squinted at the three of them sitting there in silence. He really thought they were all way too easy to fool. A while later, they finished training and headed home. Ryuji mused as he walked. That training was intense. Walking beside him, Minato couldn't help but say, "You're pretty tough yourself." Ryuji smirked. "That's because I'm always training myself. But man, I'm starving. I have to get home early to cook for the little ones." Minato asked curiously, You cook your own meals. Even with your build, Ryuji gave him a dissatisfied look. What's that supposed to mean, kid? The two of them kept walking and talking with Ryuji, skeptically asking, Do you just eat out all the time? Ryuji looked at him with dissatisfaction. What's the meaning of this, kid? As the two of them walked and talked, Ryuji asked suspiciously, Do you always eat out? Minato gave a small shake of his head and said no. I mostly just eat instant noodles, he said, casually shrugging. Ryuji was stunned, shouting in shock. Instant noodles, is that really all you eat? Minato just pouted in response. The world has become really convenient after all. Ryuji glared at him, his tone turning a bit annoyed. How can your body even handle that if you keep stuffing it with junk food that has zero nutrition? Seeing him react so strongly, Minato couldn't help but feel a bit disgruntled. You sound just like my dad. But Ryuji didn't pay it any mind. He threw his arm around Minato's shoulder and pulled him along. All right, we're going to my place. Let me treat you to a proper meal. Minato really wanted to refuse, but the guy was just too stubborn, so in the end, the two of them arrived at Ryuji's house. Even an introvert like Minato was caught off guard by the three kids clinging to him, not knowing what to do. As for Ryuji, he, of course, took on the heavy responsibility of cooking. A guy as big as him wearing a bear print apron, he brought out 2 plates of food and said apologetically, Sorry about that, having to watch the kids for me. Don't worry about it, Minato said with a calm smile. Then he used his magic to make the kids float in the air. Seeing this, Ryuji couldn't help but feel helpless. That's exactly what I'm worried about. You crazy kid, don't use magic inside the house, he grumbled while setting the plates down on the table. I've never heard of anyone using magic just to play with children like that. Minato didn't care. He tilted his head to look at the little girl beside him and smiled. You're getting scolded. The 3 kids surrounded Minato, playing so happily that even Ryuji had to remark, But it's actually quite surprising. I mean, you're not bad at babysitting, are you? Minato suddenly thought of his previous life where so many children died during the disasters. After a long moment of silence, Minato sighed and said, Children are the future of the nation after all. Hearing this, Ryuji couldn't help but feel annoyed. You sound like my grandfather talking to me. Give it a rest, will you? Minato snorted coldly, then went back to playing with the 3 kids. Soon enough, dinner was ready. The kids were excited the moment they saw the food and started eating. Minato happily joined them. The moment he took his first bite, he couldn't help but exclaim, This is so good. How long had it been since Minato had a proper, home-cooked meal? He had been so immersed in protecting the country that he'd forgotten to take care of himself. As he thought about it, Minato asked curiously, Now that I think about it, where are your parents? Ryuji shook his head and replied, I don't have a father and my mother works until late at night, so I handle the housework and babysit these kids for her while she's out working extra shift. Hearing this, Minato couldn't help but feel moved. You're really busy, aren't you? With a soft laugh, Ryuji replied casually, It's tough, but I don't hate it. I get it now. The harder something is to deal with, the more you want to take it on, right? Minato nodded in understanding. Ryuji didn't hesitate to admit it, not forgetting to show off his muscles. Minato couldn't help but sigh. What a classic case of all brawn and no brain. After the meal, Ryuji, Minato, and the 3 kids played for a while before going to sleep. Ryuji lay next to Minato and whispered, Sorry for making you stay because of the kids' childish requests. Minato shook his head slightly and replied, It's fine. It's nice to have something like this once in a while. Ryuji smiled involuntarily and said gratefully, Thank you. Minato declined to comment and said nonchalantly, I didn't do anything worth thanking me for. But Ryuji shook his head and said, No, it's about Ruka. She seems more lively than before. I think it's all thanks to you, kid. Minato couldn't help but be surprised. Hey, don't tell me you're talking about some kind of romantic thing. Thinking out loud, Minato frowned and asked, Do you like her? Ryuji couldn't help but burst out laughing. What, me and Ruka? Never in a million years. Truth is, we're both just outcasts, so we naturally stuck together, that's all. Minato was surprised after hearing that. Outcasts that's just like you. The next day, Minato and Ryuji walked to school together. When they reached the school gate, the 2 Mizuha sisters were already waiting. Seeing them arrive, Ruka spoke up in annoyance. Seriously, you're late. Ryuji quickly explained. Give us a break, will you? Kusanagi wouldn't wake up no matter how much I called him. The two Mizuha sisters asked in surprise. Did you two stay at each other's houses, a sleepover party? Or did you two secretly train without us? Minato was a bit confused by their conversation. How did everyone happen to run into each other so early in the morning? But he didn't dwell on it. Just then, two people approached from afar. It was Inspector Sugo and Sergeant Karin. Sugo looked at Minato and said, Could we ask for a moment of your time? Kusanagi. Minato sighed helplessly. Again, Karin added apologetically. Sorry for constantly bothering you, but we really have an urgent matter this time. She said that magical beasts had suddenly appeared and were currently surrounding Tokyo Tower. There was a possibility that this was related to the disaster, so they were hoping for his cooperation. Minato frowned upon hearing that. But I'm just a student. Sugo shook his head slightly. He spoke seriously. You single-handedly stopped an entire wave of disaster. Since that moment, you haven't been seen as just a student anymore. Honestly speaking, this is something we can't handle on our own. Minato narrowed his eyes and asked suspiciously, Is it really okay for a police officer to say something like that? Sugo's face was extremely sincere, his tone sounding almost desperate. This means we really are at our wits' end. Kusanagi, please work with us. Minato hesitated for a moment. Then, after a moment, he nodded and replied, If you guys have no objections, then fine. I'll lend you my power. Sugo was stunned. Minato felt truly helpless, despite not wanting to stand out. He couldn't help it, as the situation didn't allow him to do otherwise. Sugo, of course, was unaware of Minato's inner thoughts and was overjoyed to hear his agreement. Of course, you'll also receive fair compensation. And don't worry, we'll take the initiative to contact the academy for you. Ruka and the other two, standing behind, heard this and also wanted to help. The three of them chimed in simultaneously. We want to help too. We can support everyone from the back. We want to participate as well. Sugo sighed helplessly. Thanks for the offer, kids, but in the current situation, there's nothing you can do. Ruka immediately retorted, We are all top-ranked students. Before she could finish, Sugo coldly interrupted, You may be top of your class, but we are talking about a life-or-death battle. He narrowed his eyes, looking at the three of them seriously. Tell me, is there anyone here confident that their skills can match Kusanagi's? This question left all three of them silent, unable to utter another word. Seeing they had nothing left to say, Sugo sighed and said, You three should head back to the academy. Let's go. With that, he led the way to the car, preparing to leave. Before leaving, Minato suddenly called out, Hey! It startled the three of them. Minato smiled involuntarily and said, Try your best to keep up with me, okay? The three were stunned by his words, but quickly replied in unison, Of course. Then they turned and headed back into the academy. A while later, at the police headquarters, in the meeting room of the Disaster Emergency Response Department, the leader sat at the center and said seriously, There are currently hundreds of magical beasts appearing near Tokyo Tower. We need to come up with a thorough solution before they become a threat to the citizens. He also mentioned requesting assistance from a student who played a key role during the magical disaster at the academy a few days ago. Then he invited Minato to stand up. Minato, hearing his name mentioned, stood up immediately. Seeing the student uniform he was still wearing, the officers below began whispering and gossiping. It was all filled with contempt. Karen heard it and felt quite awkward for Minato. She really couldn't stand it anymore. Just then, Sugo leaned into the microphone, cleared his throat, and everyone immediately looked up. Sugo spoke forcefully. Kusanagi Minato is the student who single-handedly stopped the disaster at the Magic Academy. I witnessed it from a very close distance. None of you sitting here could ever compare to him. He praised Minato to the high heavens, and he believed that working with him was essential, so treat him as a collaborator, not just a student. These words still did not make the useless cops below any less dissatisfied. They still saw Minato as just an inexperienced kid. Seeing them still being noisy, the leader ordered, Our mission remains unchanged, whether an outsider participates or not. We must immediately wipe out those magical beasts. Everyone head back to your units. With that order, everyone quickly dispersed. A few guys kept pointing and insulting Minato as they left. Sugo waited until everyone was gone before running up to Minato and saying apologetically, "Sorry about that, Kusanagi." Minato shook his head slightly, declining to comment. "It's fine. I suppose having to work with a student makes them uncomfortable." Seeing his calm reaction, Sugo couldn't help but sigh. "You are truly mature. Compared to him, what were you doing?" "Sanada." Karin was startled, trembling. "I was so scared I couldn't say anything at all." Seeing the two of them paying such attention to him, Minato just laughed it off to reassure them. Please don't worry about it. Because he didn't care at all. Karin felt like he was truly an angel. Afterward, they got in the car and headed to Tokyo Tower. Minato sat in the back of the car and asked suspiciously, "What is our combat strength?" Sugo slowly replied, 80 mages, mostly mid-level with only a few high-level ones." Minato frowned, lost in thought. Mages of mid-level could use second-tier magic. Higher levels could use third-tier. While he was thinking, Sugo suddenly hesitated and said, "This sounds pretty pathetic, but since you can use fourth-tier composite magic, you are our ace in the hole now." Minato narrowed his eyes at him and continued to ask, "What about the combat plan?" Sugo lowered his voice. "In this case, the whole battle is just simply using magic to overwhelm the beasts. It's not really a tactical plan. If it were just demon soldiers and beasts, it wouldn't be too bad, but with higher-level creatures, like a demon general, they will have higher intelligence. So Minato thought they needed to prepare a contingency plan for that too. Just relying on brute force couldn't be called a strategy." Thinking this, he spoke up. "From what I can see, we don't have any support equipment either, right?" Sugo said helplessly. "We usually go on missions, wearing comfortable gear to move around." Minato frowned. "But there used to be anti-beast equipment, right?" Sugo nodded slightly. "That's true, but it's rarely used now because there isn't much left." Minato became even more contemplative. How could that be? It used to be plentiful. Even knowing that magic and mages in this era aren't what they used to be. What the heck has been happening over the last 50 years? Sugo looked at Minato through the rearview mirror. The boy was sitting silently in the back, seemingly lost in his own thoughts. A while later, at the Tokyo Tower area, now occupied by magical beasts, the police car finally arrived at the scene. After getting out, Minato looked at the scene before him and couldn't help but sigh. The disaster hasn't even hit yet, but there's an unusually high number of magical beasts. He was wondering what on earth was going on. The policemen saw this scene, their faces turning pale as they trembled and muttered, Is this for real?" The numbers were even higher than the report, and what surprised them even more was that a demon general was among them. How could they possibly win? "We need to ask for reinforcements from private organizations, or maybe even noble mages would do." Sugo sighed helplessly and said he had already sent a request for help. "But they can't get here right away, because magical beasts and illegal mages have been popping up everywhere lately. They don't have time to worry about us." Hearing this, the police officers were immediately panicked and anxious. Could it be, there's no other way but to take down all those magical beasts ourselves? That's no different from walking to our deaths. Sugo glanced at Minato and asked, "Kusanagi, can you handle this?" "No, yes, I can." Minato nodded without hesitation, yet the police officers were unconvinced and scolded him. "Quit the bravado, kid. Don't try to play the hero. Just standing there alone. How could a brat like you possibly stand a chance against them?" Minato couldn't be bothered with them and said coldly, "There's something strange going on." His words left them confused and bewildered. Just then, the magical beasts suddenly shifted. The sky, which had been a clear blue, was suddenly overtaken by a blood-red color that blotted out the blue. Karin saw it and screamed in panic, "The sky! It's a disaster!" Emergency alerts were issued immediately. A large-scale disaster, the likes of which had never been seen before, had engulfed the entire country. People all across Japan were in total panic. Minato narrowed his eyes at the pile of monsters below. In contrast to his calm, the expressions on Sugo's team were grim. The police officers, seeing this for the first time, couldn't help but scream in terror. Another disaster? How can something this absurd be happening? Minato was deep in thought. Disasters usually happen naturally, but it seems like those magical beasts from earlier are the ones causing this disaster. In just 50 years, they've already figured out how to trigger disasters. Seeing that the situation was dire, someone suggested we can't handle this area without... We have no backup first. We need to regroup. While Sugo didn't know what to do, Minato suddenly spoke up. They're moving. Just as he said, the magical beasts were heading toward the city. The police officers present became even more panicked. They began scrambling in fear. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to retreat. Seeing this, Minato scoffed in contempt. The police, huh? Pretty pathetic. This upset one of the officers, who snapped, "What did you say, you brat? How could you possibly handle a fortress of magical beasts like that?" Minato flashed a confident smile, and without a second thought, leapt down. His target was the horde of magical beasts below. In moments, he landed right in the center of them. Alone, Minato looked like he was dancing amidst the swarm of magical beasts and demon soldiers. Seeing him, the magical beasts went berserk. Watching from above, the police panicked. "The kid's going to die. Get out of there." But just as they finished speaking, a powerful magical dwarf suddenly appeared, striking with wind claws. This level of strength shocked the police, and Sugo was equally surprised. But more than anything, he was overjoyed. With a single wave of his hand, the low-level magical beasts around him perished at Minato's hands. The demon soldiers were furious at the sight. Without hesitation, they simultaneously summoned their magic to attack Minato. In the blink of an eye, a barrage of spells flew toward him, only to strike an invisible barrier and be blocked. Everything's outside now. I guess one magical barrier is enough, considering there are civilians watching me. He put up a barrier for peace of mind, then used magic to wipe out the demon soldiers in front of him. Sugo was even more shocked as he watched. What kind of monstrous power is that, turns out? Minato can use multiple magic attributes, just as I thought it could only be him, he mused. Sugo immediately shouted a reminder. "Follow him, Karen! Follow him quickly, you support him!" The other police officers were still trembling like leaves, hesitating to move forward, but they quickly steeled their nerves and scrambled to follow the two. Even though their magic wasn't as strong as Minato's, handling the low-level magical beasts wasn't a problem. Up ahead, Minato saw them start to fight and smiled contentedly. Not bad, they aren't half shabby. However, a demon general soon appeared before them. Its massive body terrified the police. They felt like mere bugs compared to it. Only a legendary mage could take that down. But just then, a water serpent suddenly appeared, opened its maw, and swallowed the demon general whole. Minato said coldly, "I'll handle this one. You guys take care of the rest, all right." By the time the water subsided, a massive trench had appeared on the ground, leaving the police officers there terrified. Did the kid just take it down? That power is insane, Sugo hurriedly reminded everyone. We have to keep wiping out the magical beasts until the boss shows up. Just leave the demon general and anything stronger than it to Kusanagi. Minato up ahead was busy taking down demon generals, while thinking 60 years ago a worldwide disaster occurred, the first one. Then smaller disasters began to appear one after another to destroy the world. If the past from 60 years ago is truly repeating itself, this disaster will spread across the entire world. But this time, Minato is here. I won't let them wipe out humanity. At that same moment, in the area where Karin was healing the wounded, a demon soldier suddenly appeared beside her, startling her. It raised its hand, intending to crush Karin right then and there. In a split second, as things were hanging by a thread, Minato appeared just in time to kill the demon soldier behind her. Karin looked at Minato's sturdy back, and it was exactly like that time, the time the dark mage saved her. After wiping out the demon soldier, Minato turned his head, looked at Karin, and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Karin finally snapped out of it. "Ah, yeah, thanks, Kusanagi." Minato narrowed his eyes at her, thinking to himself, the situation just now was exactly like last time. Does she suspect anything? Just as he guessed, Karin really had realized it. She was wondering why Minato chose to become a dark mage, and how he could be so absurdly powerful. But Karin figured Minato would hate her if she asked him those kinds of questions. Thinking this, she suddenly felt like her thoughts were inappropriate. After all, the person in front of her was just a student. You shouldn't have thoughts like that, stay focused. While she was distracted, a beast monster attacked. Luckily, Minato pulled Karin aside before using magic to blast the creature. Karin looked at him apologetically. "I'm sorry. Please stay close to me," Minato said in a low voice, not paying her any mind. It seemed like she couldn't use any offensive magic at all. Karin was a bit startled but quickly nodded. "Got it." But she had a thought. Is Minato really just a student? He's even more mature than she is. Right at that moment, a terrifying scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. The police officers' faces turned pale in an instant. They stumbled in panic, muttering, "What is that? I can't stop shaking." The demon general at that moment was enveloped by an immense amount of magic. Seeing this, Sugo couldn't help but shout in horror, "A mutated demon general! Why is a high-ranking creature like that here?" Those police officers were so terrified, their legs went weak and they collapsed to the ground despairingly, whispering, "No way! No way! I don't know if the noble mage can even beat that thing." The only one not afraid was Minato. He stepped forward. Seeing that the two officers shouted a warning, "Are you crazy? Stop. No matter how strong you are, you don't stand a chance against that monster." But Minato just smiled at them confidently, saying, "I can do it though." These words left the police stunned, unable to speak. But quickly the trembling in their bodies stopped. Karin was silently praying, hoping Minato could defeat that mutated demon general. That mutated monster. Sugo looked at Minato with high expectations. He's probably already on par with a noble mage, so Minato defeating the mutated demon general wasn't out of reach. Thinking this, Sugo smirked with excitement. "All right then, show me. Show me your true power." To let Minato focus on handling the mutated demon general, Sugo ordered everyone to put all their effort into wiping out the remaining demon soldiers. At the same time, Minato squinted at the mutated demon general. He fell into a silence. At this moment, he was standing face to face with it. While Minato was deep in thought, the mutated demon general began its attack. A brilliant flame flew rapidly toward Minato, but it just grazed past him, exploding behind him with smoke and fire filling the sky. Seeing this, the police behind couldn't help but exclaim, "That's only a Tier 1 attack. What kind of absurd power is that? These cruel, vicious monsters." Meanwhile, Minato stood there calmly brushing dust off his shoulder. The mutated demon general stared at him. A low, slow voice resonated. "What are you?" Minato indifferently shrugged and pouted. "Just an ordinary student, at least for now." This left the demon general confused. While it was still bewildered, the magical energy in Minato's body erupted violently. Seeing that massive surge of magic, the demon general immediately sensed danger. It began to mutter, "Kill the strong human." Then, a massive fireball appeared in front of Minato. In the distance, the police saw it and panicked. "Tier 6. That's impossible." Yet Minato remained standing there calmly. He was thinking about what to do. Even if he dodged this attack, or used offensive magic to counter it directly, the people behind him wouldn't be able to avoid being engulfed by the sea of fire. At that moment, the beast monsters attacking the police behind him suddenly turned and directed their magic toward Minato. In the blink of an eye, a series of spells rushed toward him, creating a truly terrifying scene. Sugo's face went grim instantly. They're coordinating with each other. That's just absurd. Karin on her side was equally terrified and hurriedly screamed, "Kusanagi, run away!" But Minato still stood there calm, facing a barrage of magic rushing toward him all by himself. At the same time, the brilliant flames were also raging toward him. But before they could even touch Minato, a massive wave of water appeared, and the fire was extinguished upon contact with the water. Not only that, the other monster's magic was also blocked by Minato. Before they could reach him, they hit an invisible barrier. This scene left the mutated demon general stunned. Minato raised an eyebrow at it and asked coldly, "Are you finished?" Even Sugu, standing nearby, had his eyes wide and mouth agape. "What the hell is this kid?" Karin was no different. She gasped in shock. What just happened? At this point, Sugo really felt like this was beyond his wildest imagination. Even seeing it with my own eyes, I can't believe something so absurd is happening right in front of me. Karin couldn't help but exclaim, as only noble mages are supposed to be capable of using magic of that level. That was a special technique even on par with Kusanagi's remote control. "Is it really possible to do that?" Sugo whispered, biting his lip. But what was even more shocking was that the kid could use a second spell at the same time. Usually you can only use one type of magic per casting, and you'd have to wait a while before using another. Yet Minato used 2 different spells almost at the same time. This truly shocked Sugo. Even just one type of magic is already incredibly powerful. To be able to use more than one at the same time, I really feel like Minato might even surpass a noble mage. The more Sugo spoke, the more excited he became. His intuition couldn't be wrong. Minato really was the person he had been searching for, a second Ichikami Minato. But little did Sugo know the current Minato was that very same great mage reborn. Right at that moment, the demon general rushed madly toward Minato. Minato didn't panic at all. He calmly said, "This is getting boring. Let's go somewhere more fun, shall we?" These words left the demon general bewildered. Before it could even process what happened, it was sent flying into the air by an invisible force. Minato had used magic to blast it upward, but it quickly used magic to steady itself in midair. Immediately after, he also quickly flew up to face the demon general. He smirked. "Looks like you can use magic too, don't you?" The demon general narrowed its eyes at Minato. It spoke with a sinister tone. "If you don't want to suffer through another campaign," but before it could finish, Minato coldly cut it off. "I don't give a damn about those petty tactics of yours." Because up here, he no longer needed to hold back. Seeing that he wouldn't cooperate, the demon general lunged to attack, but Minato easily dodged the strike. Of course, the demon general didn't give up. It attacked furiously again, forcing Minato to slide backward. Seizing the opportunity, it summoned a spell. Minato slightly frowned as he looked up. A fireball appeared and an intense heat spread through the air. At the same time, the demon general closed in on him. Without a moment of hesitation, it struck viciously, knocking Minato from the sky down to the ground. The demon general looked down from above. With a loud boom, the ground was filled with dust and smoke, but as the dust cleared, it was immediately shocked, because Minato was still standing there, proud and completely unharmed. The demon general couldn't believe it and shouted, "How is that possible?" Minato, of course, wasn't about to explain it to him. He launched himself from the ground, appearing in front of the demon general in the blink of an eye. He smirked. "Looks like you can't use magic anymore, huh? Looks like it's down to hand-to-hand combat now, but that'll be useless too." As he said that, Minato's eyes turned resolute. Without hesitation, he charged at the demon general. Minato scoffed. "You can't defeat me." In an instant, his powerful fist struck, sending the demon general flying far away. It couldn't believe it and muttered, "Impossible. How can human fists have any effect?" It then used magic to steady itself in the air. It was now at the peak of its rage. It shouted angrily, "You damn brat, what are you?" Minato didn't answer. He just smirked and said, "Did you think I could only use magic? Then I'll show you. My exclusive technique." Saying that, Minato flashed a sinister smile. Immediately after, an unusual aura appeared around him. It was full of color. In the blink of an eye, it erupted in the air, a power that seemed ready to swallow everything. Seeing this, the demon general was instantly panicked. What kind of terrifying magic is this? Even Sugo and Karin were no exception. What's going on, this kid? Is something happening in the air? Minato didn't care about anyone's reaction and kept focusing on unleashing his mana. He concentrated, closing his eyes, seemingly gathering all the mana in the air. When he felt it was enough, Minato slowly opened his eyes. His face now showed clear confidence, and his aura had changed completely. The demon general grew more and more frightened, but it stubbornly shouted, "Even if you coat your body in mana, human attacks have no effect on us." "Then why don't you try it and see?" Minato scoffed. Then, in a flash, he appeared right in front of the demon general. The demon general was instantly panicked and tried to dodge, but it was too late. Minato's fist slammed down. Not only that, he unleashed a flurry of punches at the demon general. Minato's momentum was so ferocious that he pushed the demon general onto the defensive step by step. This stunning scene truly left Sugo unable to believe his eyes. He mumbled in confusion. "He's overwhelming the demon general in a one-on-one fight. How is that possible? How can human punches deal damage to a magical beast?" And not only that, Minato can even hurt it with magic. This is beyond imagination. In the blink of an eye, the demon general's body was covered in wounds. It said in frustration, "Why? How can human attacks have any effect?" Minato said coldly, "Normal punches or weapons are meaningless against you guys, but it's different if you channel a massive amount of mana into them." He continued to attack. That state where his body is enveloped in magic power, that's a strike that combines both magic and martial arts. Minato says we can call it magic arts synthesis to make it easier to picture. The demon general grows increasingly furious, roaring aggressively at being surpassed by a mere human brat. How is this even possible? Immediately after, the demon general lunged madly at Minato, but Minato easily dodged its attacks and retaliated, driving a fist deep into its gut. That single punch tore right through the demon general's stomach, sending it crashing to the ground like a broken kite, landing right in the center of the magic bee swarm. As it was defeated, the sky returned to its original blue. Seeing this, everyone cheered with joy. The disaster has stopped. That kid actually did it. Seeing everyone celebrating, Sugo quickly reminded them not to let their guard down, urging them to finish off the remaining magic beasts. Looking down from above, Minato let out a relieved smile, thinking, "I can leave the rest to the police." He quickly withdrew the magic power surrounding his body. Before long, it vanished completely. Minato was back to normal and thinking of something he couldn't help but chuckle. "It's been a while since I used magic art synthesis, huh? I'm getting a bit rusty." Soon after, Minato landed on the ground, but the scene before him made him flinch. The police had finished off the magic beasts and were now standing in a perfectly formal line. Seeing him return, Sugo spoke up clearly. "We are truly grateful for your hard work, kid. During the insectoid attack just now, on behalf of the police department, I want to thank you for your cooperation." He gave a sharp salute. "Kusanagi Minato." The moment he finished speaking, the entire police force offered the most solemn salute to Minato. Ever since that day, disasters began striking one after another all over the world. Thanks to the timely response of the police force and the noble mages, the disasters officially ceased. Tension regarding the disasters rose, and waves of public criticism were aimed at the government and the police force. Expectations and disappointments constantly bombarded the mages. As the public's tension continued to escalate, some started saying, "If only a dark mage were here. A dark mage could protect us." From then on, a wave of support for dark mages emerged online. But no matter what was happening online, Minato was currently in trouble. Someone had leaked the news that Minato participated in the battle to stop the disaster. The students in his class swarmed him again, asking questions. Minato felt truly annoyed. Just dealing with them was more exhausting than killing the demon general. Duika sat nearby, watching him sigh incessantly, feeling worried. Just then, the teacher entered the classroom. Standing on the podium with a serious tone, she said, "Today we will discuss the recent disaster event." The students below heard the teacher constantly talk about the need to protect the country in the future, and everyone's expression turned grim. The teacher didn't notice and continued, "So it is not impossible that you might be summoned one day. Because of that, please be ready at any moment. Although, in this class, we already have one student with experience." Saying that, her eyes glanced toward Minato sitting below. But just then, Karen suddenly burst through the door. The teacher asked in confusion, "Wait a second. What is going on with you people?" Karen spoke up urgently. "We are the police. We have received orders from police headquarters. Kusanagi, we are very sorry to say this, but we hope you can lend us your strength once more." Minato heard this and felt helplessly resigned. Seriously, not even trying to keep up the police image. Where did all the police honor go? And what's with the way the people around me are looking at me? Stop with those creepy worshipful looks, will you? He really didn't like it, but there was no other choice. Minato could only agree. He stood up from his seat, walked over to Karen and said, "Please explain the situation quickly." Karen nodded slightly and replied, "Beyond the disasters, magic beasts have started running rampant everywhere in the world. Rogue mages and underground organizations are also becoming very active. More than ever, we are currently extremely short-handed." That was why they were bothering Minato again. Saying this, she sighed apologetically, being honest. "I'm sorry for bothering you time and time again. But there truly is no one else as reliable as you, Kusanagi. Minato didn't comment, took out his phone and said, "Then next time, contact me directly first." Karen was stunned, then quickly said, "I'm sorry, I'll learn from this next time." She quickly received Minato's contact info, standing there stunned for a long while, without saying a word. Minato looked at her and asked seriously, "So, what do you want me to do now?" Karen finally regained her composure and quickly opened her mouth. "We want to ask for your help in cleaning up the magic beasts rampaging in Harajuku." Minato nodded slightly. "All right, understood." Seeing him about to head over, Karen suggested, "We will travel there by car." But before she could finish, she saw Minato glide past her. He had used magic to run ahead. He said indifferently, "At that rate, we won't make it in time. I'll go first." Seeing Minato vanish in an instant, the police officers behind were shocked. "That is way too fast." A moment later, in the Harajuku area, this place had become a ruin. High-rise. Buildings had collapsed into piles of rubble. Inside, there were two children trapped. The younger child hugged their older brother, trembling and whispering, "Brother." The older child, although very scared, still held their sibling tight and said firmly, "It's okay, Big Brother will protect you." Just then, a magic beast lunged toward the two children. Even though they were terrified, the older one grabbed their sibling's hand and started running. But in their panic, the younger one tripped and fell flat on the ground. The beast's razor-sharp teeth were closing in. The two kids were as good as done for. In that split-second life-or-death moment, a blast of magical energy shot from afar, taking out the beast. The one who acted was Minato. He had just arrived and seen the scene, and without a second hesitation, he reached out to help. Seeing him take down the beast with just a casual flick of his hand, the two kids were stunned into silence. Minato slowly walked up to them. He smiled and praised them. "You were so brave, that was amazing." But right after that, he noticed a doll lying on the ground. He picked it up and asked curiously, "Is this yours?" The younger one immediately replied, "Yes." Minato could clearly see the look of admiration in the kid's eyes. He couldn't help but smile. Finally, Minato slowly opened his mouth to say, "I'll protect you both." And then he ran off back into the fray. The two kids bowed to thank him, but he had vanished in a flash. Who knows if he even heard them? The younger one hugged the doll tightly, their face full of hero worship. Meanwhile, Minato had pushed deep into the city. The battle in this city was even more chaotic than the one at the academy. Since there were still people fleeing, he couldn't use magic artillery. Minato could distinguish between magical beasts and humans, but he couldn't detect those without magical power. The only way to save everyone was for him, Anto, to patrol the area himself. Just as Minato was thinking this, members of the magic police force arrived. The leader shouted, reminding his team, "Focus on wiping out the beasts. Leave the civilian rescue to the fire department and the army." Right then, one officer noticed Minato and looked up. He waved and shouted, "Hey, Kusanagi!" Minato narrowed his eyes as he looked down. He remembered this officer, wasn't he? The guy who appeared during the Tokyo Tower disaster. Recognizing an acquaintance, Minato immediately jumped down. The officer ran up and said, "So, you're here to provide backup. That's a huge help." Minato, too lazy for small talk, went straight to the point. "What's the situation?" The officer answered immediately, "We haven't even rescued half the civilians yet. It's so bad that we can't even reach the east side. There are too many beasts over there." Hearing that, Minato said, "Then I'll go check that part of the city." Having said that, he took off running. The officer called out urgently, "There have been reports of rogue mages over there too, be careful." But he knew full well that warning him was useless, thinking that the officer looked at his squad members behind him. Those who hadn't been at the Tokyo Tower disaster were seeing Minato take down beasts for the first time, and they were completely bewildered. Who on earth was that young man? He had wiped out those monsters in the blink of an eye. The officer chuckled softly and muttered, "Maybe he's just someone who shows up for us in the middle of chaos." Elsewhere on the east side of the city, Minato was currently using level 6 magic to take out swathes of beasts. But there was something bothering him. The fact that a demon clan captain had appeared outside of the Great Calamity period was something that should have been impossible. Even a few years ago, the monsters hadn't been this numerous, nor this strong. Things had escalated to a level where even Minato was struggling to keep up. If they didn't start preparing now, everything could spiral out of control. Thinking that saving lives was still the most important thing, Minato reached out to two people trapped under the rubble and pulled them to safety. Afterward, he handed them over to the fire department and ran off again. He had a few plans in his head, but he wasn't sure which to choose. Thanks to Minato's help, many trapped civilians were rescued. When things had settled down a bit, Karen finally led her team over. Minato didn't pay them any attention and continued saving people. Thanks to him, almost everyone in the city was saved. The police were extremely grateful, grabbing Minato's hand and smiling. "Thanks for all your help, Kusanagi. Because of you, we minimized the casualties." Minato shook his head and said, "No, it's thanks to the police and firefighters. I just did some simple tasks." That officer was stunned for a long moment at his response. He bowed to Minato and said solemnly, "I truly apologize for what happened in the past. Because of our immaturity, I hope you won't hold a grudge." Seeing them like this, Minato sighed helplessly and said, "Don't worry too much about that." He was so mature that it made those who had previously given him a hard time feel awkward. They could only thank him repeatedly. Karen too said appreciatively, "Thank you so much. I'm so sorry that we keep having to rely on Kusanagi even though you're just a student." Minato dismissed the sentiment, shaking his head. "It's fine. I agreed to help after all." Bringing it back to business, he said seriously, "But what worries me is that not only are there too many of them, they are all incredibly powerful." Karen nodded in agreement. "That's right. We need a plan to deal with this monster swarm and the catastrophe. Senior Sugo is also taking action." But as they were talking, the two kids from earlier suddenly walked over. Seeing the kids, Minato smiled. "I'm so glad you're both safe." Just then, the younger child innocently asked, "Big brother, are you the Grand Sage?" Hearing that, the older sibling quickly explained, "I'm sorry, my little brother really loves the Grand Sage." Minato didn't pay attention, staring intently at the doll in the child's hand. If he wasn't mistaken, that was himself from his past life, wasn't it? Minato's mouth curled up. He was clearly quite amused. Right after that, he nodded and replied, "That's right. I am the Grand Sage, you know." The kid's eyes lit up instantly, shouting excitedly. 50 years ago, when he was Ichikami Minato, Minato had been very unhappy about being turned into a doll. He had questioned the person next to him, but that person didn't care, happily saying, "It's not just dolls. There are also photo cards and keychains." Minato sighed helplessly. No way. Who would actually want things like that? That person remained firm and fierce. The Grand Sage is everyone's emotional anchor. These items are things that kids especially need to have. Minato still disagreed. Seeing him, as still annoyed, the person directly snapped, "You're wrong, 50. No, even 100 years from now it will still be helping people. So please let me Ichigami escape the past." Minato smiled faintly. It seemed like those words were true. But simple dolls don't have the power to save anyone. A great sage like you is still necessary at a time like this. Meanwhile, in a bar elsewhere in the city, a crowd gathered to report on the Dark Mage. The man sitting in the main seat was Kuraya Kuto, the leader of the Black Rebellion organization. After hearing his subordinate's report, he gritted his teeth and said, "An illegal mage who doesn't belong to any guild. That means there's some bastard daring to go against me, right?" The subordinates, hearing his angry tone, trembled in fear, cold sweat beating on their foreheads as they stammered, "Yes." With a cold huff, Akuto ordered, "Find out the true identity of that dark mage. I don't care if you have to use military force." Hearing this, the subordinates went deathly silent until a man wearing glasses suddenly, Dafia, stepped forward. This was Kagasuji, the manager of the Kabukicho district. He smirked and asked, "And if he refuses, can we just kill him?" Akuto gave a cold, sneering laugh and replied, "Only after torturing him. I'm really looking forward to that." Suji, hearing this, became even more smug and let out an evil laugh. The next day, Minato's group was practicing as usual. While training at the Mizuhara mansion during a break, Ruka suddenly asked with suspicion, "By the way, Kusunagi, how much magic power do you have right now?" Zuka was also a bit curious. Maybe around 100,000. If it's more, let's say 500,000. If it's Minato, that's entirely possible. While everyone was skeptical, Minato casually replied, "Actually, it's 99,990,000. This number left the three of them, Rukazuka and the others, completely stunned. They didn't believe it at all. Ruka scoffed and muttered, "Even Ichikami Minato only has around 1 million. Hearing this, Minato couldn't help but frown. "Ichikami Minato's magic power is only 1 million, da." Zuka immediately answered, "That's why people always say 1 million is the limit. The absolute limit for magic power. Don't you really know that that's common knowledge?" Zuka asked, surprised. Minato didn't answer. He didn't think his magic power in his past life was only about 1 million. He had to check on the internet to see. No sooner said than done. Minato quickly searched for information online. But he searched for a long time and couldn't find anything. Minato sighed helplessly. He had forgotten how to use this piece of junk phone. Anyway, it was already annoying enough, so screw it. Just then, Minato's phone suddenly rang. It was a call from Sugo. He quickly picked up and asked suspiciously, "Hello, what's up?" On the other end of the line, Sugo replied urgently, "Sorry for calling you so suddenly. Are your friends there with you too?" Minato nodded and replied, "Yeah, they are." Sugo said in a low voice, "Could you please put me on speakerphone?" Minato, being a tech illiterate, didn't know how to turn on the speaker. He had to ask Zuka to do it for him. Very quickly, Sugo's voice came through the phone. "The truth is, to deal with natural disasters and an unusually large number of magical beasts, we have decided to establish a unit specifically to hunt those beasts down. It will be called the Special Mage Unit," and he wanted to nominate Minato to be the captain of this special unit. The three, including Zuka, were stunned when they heard this, not knowing how to react. Zuka thought that if one calls oneself a mage, then they absolutely must attain that title. There's no way Minato would refuse, right? But Minato refused without a moment's hesitation. "I don't agree." Before Sugo could even ask again, Zuka yelled in confusion, "Why?" Minato didn't understand why she was getting so worked up. "What does it have to do with you?" On the other end of the line, Sugo spoke up again. "Could you let me explain first?" Minato frowned slightly and muttered, "Fine, go ahead and tell me." Sugo slowly explained, "First, there are too many problems happening at once right now, but there's not enough manpower to handle them. Plus, the current situation is that we cannot clean up these magical beasts on our own." Minato frowned tightly upon hearing this. "Is it because the current ranks of the mages are all too low?" Thinking about it, he asked suspiciously, "What about the noble mages?" Sugo, on the other end, quickly replied, "The heads of the Mizuhara Homure and Kaichi mage families haven't returned from a meeting abroad yet. Only the Fuyuka family remains, but things are a bit complicated." Minato looked up at the two Mizuhara sisters and said, "Now that I think about it, I still haven't met your parents, have I?" Zuka scoffed and said, "I've been away from home for quite a while." Minato nodded understanding and didn't say anything more. On the other end of the line, Sugo continued, "The members will include over 12 police officers and members from the academy, including Mizuhazuka, Mizuharuka, and Katsuragi Ryuji. I'm nominating the three of you." He said he would handle all the troublesome things like paperwork and negotiations himself. All Minato needed to do was to focus on training and leading the mages in the unit. Of course, he would be rewarded. Seeing that he didn't answer, Sugo stood up urgently, his tone filled with pleading. "I'm begging you. I can only rely on you. Kusanagi, please accept the role of captain." Minato heard that he was getting more and more desperate, so he sighed helplessly. In the end, he gave in and said, "Fine, let's do it." Hearing how urgent he was becoming, Minato let out a reluctant sigh. In the end, he gave in and said, "Fine, let's do it that way." Is Sugo seriously happy about this already? Yuka and the other two are just as excited. They're all for it, aren't they? There's no reason for them to say no, and honestly, they don't want Minato to shoulder everything alone. Minato is still a bit worried, but it should be fine. He can always train them further, right, a few days later. A wave of public criticism is starting to crash down on the Fuyuka Mage household. On top of neglecting their duties during the recent disaster at the Magic Academy, their handling of the magical beast situation has been incredibly slow. The head of the Fuyuka family is absolutely furious when he hears the backlash. He grinds his teeth and curses. Those fools! Do they really think noble mages have nothing better to do? Just then, a knock echoes from outside. He barks out, "Come in!" The butler enters and bows, keeping his voice low. "Pardon the intrusion, sir. I've received a document from the city police department." The Fuyuka family head frowns at the document in his hand, muttering, "A notice regarding the formation of a special mage unit. Those incompetents love meddling in things that don't concern them." But just as he finishes, he suddenly thinks of something. He smirks and says, "Wait a minute. This alone should be enough to shut those commoners up. Bring my foolish son to me." The butler nods, immediately follows the order, and leaves. The next morning, at police headquarters, per Sugo's suggestion, a meeting is being held for the core members of the special unit. Naturally, Minato the captain is there. The 3 from Yuka's group are there as well. Since they agreed, they couldn't exactly be absent. Aside from them, there's only Sugo and 3 other police officers. The turnout is lower than expected. Minato narrows his eyes at Sugo. He says, clearly dissatisfied, 12 people, Sugo. Really, Sugo? Sheepishly explains, "Hey, give me a break." A few people wanted to join at first, but at the last minute nobody actually submitted an application. Minato sighs, feeling helpless. Well, he could already guess the story. Who would be happy taking orders from a captain who hasn't even graduated from school? While Minato is lost in thought, Sugo places something in his hand and speaks up. "Also, I'm handing this over to you. It's a temporary mage badge." Sugo explains slowly. "This is an external operation, but since you guys are still students, make sure to show this if needed. It's marked temporary, because officially you're not considered full-fledged mages yet." After saying that, he hands badges to Yuka and the others too, then pats Minato on the shoulder and says with a grin, "My job ends here. The stage is all yours, Captain Kusanagi." Minato can't help but smile. It's been a long time since he stood in front of a group like this, but he doesn't hold back. He takes a few steps forward and speaks in a firm, clear voice. "I am Kusanagi Minato, and I will be serving as the captain of this special operations unit. Let's get to work."